There it goes. Yeah.
Oh, we are now live. Welcome to Atheist Edge, not the Atheist Edge, like Steve McRae liked to bill us. I'm busting his balls right off the bat. We are Atheist Edge, not the Atheist Edge.
Oh, okay.
We have a special guest on the show. Steve,
Me!
That's her. I mean me. I don't know who you're referring to.
The illustrious Steve McRae. If you don't know him, you've been definitely living under a rock for about the last 6 months to a year. He is the host and founder, correct me if I'm wrong, of the Steve McRae YouTube channel and the Great Debate Community. He hosts some very prominent believers and non-believers in debates and discussions. This will be the last time I ever bring up this topic, which we are going to talk about, which is the word usage of atheist and agnostic, and why Steve McRae likes to call himself an agnostic. And not only that, he likes to disparage atheists for calling us ourselves atheists. And this will be the last time I even bring it up.
Take it, Steve. Take it.
Right off the bat.
I'm
going hard, baby.
Right in the nuts, right off the bat. And you will not hear us on this channel speak of it again. If ever if ever the topic gets brought up again from here on out, I'm just going to link them to this episode.
All right.
So this is it, the final. And then at the end, I've got some 10 bonus speed round questions for Steve. We have a minimum of an hour and a half to talk. We have a maximum of 2 hours to talk. Every minute is precious. I've got Courtney to my right, and I got TJ to my left. And welcome, Steve.
Hello. And yeah, I'm also the co-host for the Non Sequitur Show channel. Don't forget about that, because that's the one of the fastest growing podcasts out there right now. We are in the top 5 on podcast land. We might make podcast of the month. We've had over 6,000 downloads already just off Fireside FM, and probably 5 times that across our RSS feeds. 24,000 watched views already on just the Hovind and Aaron Ra discussion alone. We're close to about a million minutes already watched, and we've only been active for about 2 months. So that's me. Hi. Hey,
congratulations, man. I mean, that is
thank you.
Our show turns 1 year old on April 23rd, and after this show, with your following, I think, because we're at like 980 subscribers.
Oh, we'll get you over that by the end of the year.
I think we're going to hit 1,000. Hopefully we hit 1,000. If we do, we got a big celebration plan.
Yeah, awesome.
Yep, this is going to be huge.
Come say hello.
Right. Okay, so I already busted your balls about the Atheist Edge. It's just Atheist Edge. The next question is going to be from TJ, and he's going to talk. And this is the only time we're going to actually bring up the actual dictionary definition of the words, and then we're going to leave it alone from there. We'll go from there.
Well, real quick. Atheist Edge is a noun, right? So you say the Atheist Edge Show, correct?
Oh, if the is uncapitalized, then that would be grammatically correct.
That's okay. We're on the same page here, buddy. Proper grammar. All right.
Great point. All right.
I try to make a few every now and then.
No, okay, so like, I mean, I kind of have like talked with you about this a little bit. And I've at least seen you talk about it on your channel quite extensively. So obviously we know, a person who does not believe in the existence of a God or any gods, that's what I'm pulling out of, just Merriam-Webster, as far as atheists. Now, like, I know you try not to like put too much stock in like unscientific, like colloquial usages of words. Like that's part of what you're standing on here in your position. And so I don't even want to like belabor that point too much. But like, so as far as like in practical terms, like things that are happening to people in this world, in this reality that we occupy currently. So when you're talking about like, okay, like for instance, people in Bangladesh that are blogging, about, irreligiousness, right? Talking about not believing in gods, they're characterized as atheists, whether or not they say that there is no God or they just don't believe in any God. They're being systematically hunted down and slaughtered without regard to any distinction in that respect. So would you care to like illuminate us in how you see that struggle as far as it pertains to this particular distinction that you're trying to make.
Obviously, I think you're leading off on an appeal to emotion there, because when I'm talking when I'm talking about why I'm an agnostic, right, there are reasons why I hold to agnosticism, and my reasons for my agnosticism have nothing to do with people in Bangladesh. It has nothing to do with what the dictionary says, nothing to do with anything besides my reasoning, right? So my reasoning is pretty simple. Let's talk about the reasoning rather than getting to the definitions. I think doesn't matter. You can hold any definition you want. I like to discuss what people think, what they believe, what their reasoning is for holding their particular beliefs or lack of belief. So the great debate question has always been extensively is there a God? Does God exist? Right? I think that's kind of the center point of great debate. Would you not agree?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So if I ask you that question, does God exist? There's only two direct answers to that question. There's an infinite amount of indirect. And by the way, let me give a clarification. I had nothing to do with any of this. Blame them, blame them, blame them. But at the same time, like the video, subscribe to them, and go subscribe to their Twitter too. So we got to get them over 1K by the next half hour.
Sure. Thank you.
So when I ask you, do you believe in God? You're going to say no, would you not? Because if you say yes, you're a theist. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'd say if you answer in the negative to that proposition, or if you say you're not convinced of that proposition, I would say you lack a belief in a God.
You're going ahead of me. If I just ask,
because I already know where you asked.
I don't think you do, actually. I don't think you do. Does God exist? If you answer yes, you would agree you're a theist, would you not?
Yeah, if you answer affirmative to that question.
Okay, so we're definitely on the same page there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you answer no to that question, and I answer no to that question, there might be different reasoning why we answer no to that question. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay. You might answer that question no, because you just may not have a God belief. You could not have heard of God. You just, like you say, may have listened to the theist arguments and not convinced. That could be your position. Well, it's likely lack of position, but that could be why you would answer no, correct?
Right, but I also you're assuming though that there's a knowledge.
I'm not making any assumptions, and this has nothing to do with knowledge.
A person that has never been exposed to a belief in God or the concept of God is the same as a rock. And a lot of atheists will say even rocks or newborn babies are atheists.
You're jumping the shark here. You're jumping the shark.
You asked me that, and I didn't say yes. My answer doesn't necessarily have to be no. It could be I don't know, but I don't believe the people.
Again, let me clarify this, because you guys are jumping into things that I'm not asking. Okay. There are two direct answers to that question: does God exist? There's the affirmative, which is the acceptance of the proposition yes, which is a theist. Then there's the no, right, which could, in this particular case, is that you do not hold a God belief for whatever reason. If you're not exposed to a God belief, they don't have a God belief. I can ask a child and say, does God exist? They have no idea what that means. To them, they're going to answer no, right? For that very reason, correct? They don't hold a God belief. Okay. So the reason why someone like TJ might have to answer no is different from the reason I will answer no, even though we both don't have a God belief. We're both non-theist. I think we agree with that, correct?
Hmm.
Okay. So I've already looked at the proposition, and I've already suspended judgment on not only the proposition of theism, which is at least one God exists, but I've also suspended judgment on the proposition for atheism as a belief, such as there are no gods in the universe. So if I say, if I was an atheist that actually believed gods do not exist, I can say to you, hey, gods do not exist, or there are no gods in the universe. And you can say that is true or false, right?
There's a third option.
Sure, you can say I don't know. You can do whatever you want with it. But if you answer true to that, you would be obviously considered to be an atheist, would you not? You believe there's no gods.
A hard 7 on the Dawkins scale.
I would say you'd be a narrow.
But
8.
I feel like that would be.
I can tell you right now, the Dawkins scale I wouldn't use the Dawkins scale. It's really, really bad. I can't stand it. Most atheists I know can't stand it. He really makes no sense that.
Yeah, I hate that.
Would you?
Yeah, because what he does is he correlates strong atheism to certainty. And there's no relationship between strong atheism and
however you want to delineate, differentiate between an atheist who makes a positive claim and an atheist who doesn't make a positive claim.
Who's just rejecting someone else's positive truth claim.
There you go. Sure. Yeah.
Well, like I said, there are atheists that do actually believe gods do not exist.
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay. Now, let's for arguendo say that I'm one of those atheists. I actually believe that there are no gods. I will tell you there are no gods. Will straight up tell you ontologically speaking, in the universe, no gods exist. That the proposition of theism is absolutely false. I reject it. Now, you, by saying that you answer no to the question, does God exist? You might just, again, not have that position. You may not believe that gods don't exist. You might actually just have no belief on it whatsoever. So it's two different positions. My position as agnostic is such that I hold to theism is not true and atheism is not true. I suspend judgment on both, and therefore I don't evaluate either proposition.
Well, you're not a truth claim to either proposition is what you're saying. Basically.
I think you're redefining atheism, because I understand atheism to be simply non-theism, meaning you don't hold a belief for whatever reason.
Right, but unfortunately, that's the narrative put out by American atheists and other atheist communities. But in philosophy and formal academics, you will not find a single citation like that. Every single one of them, from Ross to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, to Oxford Philosophy, not the handbook. The handbook is an opinion piece, but Oxford's philosophy book on words. You'll find that every single one of them defines atheism in the positive as either A, propositionally, meaning that you believe atheism is false, you reject that proposition, or psychologically, meaning that you hold a belief, not just as the proposition's false, but you hold the belief actually that there are no gods in the universe. That's how it's taught in academic settings.
Okay, a rejection of the claim is not a positive belief.
A rejection in philosophy means you do not accept, and you're asserting the opposite. If I say,
no,
this is propositional logic, I assure you this is correct. If I say, here's a proposition, the law of excluded middle says that it can only be true or false. Okay? No. Listen, you're conflating rejection in colloquial terms in regards to a propositional state. If I say a proposition is P equals something, if I reject it as being true, I am asserting that it is false. That's how it's generally understood. Okay, it's not the same, and it's not the same thing.
Well, but that's the major distinction.
Isn't that a false dichotomy? Where if I reject what your claim, then something else has to be true. There can't be a C factor. There can't be.
No. Okay. Okay. So here's again. When you can either accept, reject, or suspend judgment on a proposition. Okay. If I accept it, I'm asserting that value for the truth that proposition is true.
I agree.
Okay. If I reject it, I am saying that it's false. If I say I would suspend judgment, and I'm not assigning a truth value.
I think there's more than that.
Okay.
There's another position.
No. You could be an atheist. You could be a lot of different things.
Let's go with that third definition where you suspend judgment. That's us. We're suspending judgment in the absence of any material evidence.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing.
Then we look at the Greek root word of atheism, atheos, meaning free from or without,
no,
just
like what I mean.
Amorphic or asymmetric.
No. According to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and in every other source, you're committing an etymological fallacy. An atheist means not. It is the rejection of the proposition. It means not P. It doesn't mean without. It doesn't mean without gods. It means literally, propositionally, if you look at the very first thing in Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy under atheism, it defines more often that atheism is held to be a propositional state of the rejection of theism, meaning that it even says in there, A means not. It does not mean without. It specifically has that caveat because many people are putting forth the narrative that A in atheos means without gods. It doesn't. It literally means in relationship to the proposition that it's negation of it. It is negation.
What is an amoeba? Amoeba or amorphous?
Again, etymological fallacy. How it's used in other words makes no difference. How it's used in this word, understood in terms of philosophy, is how I'm explaining it. That is how it's understood in academics.
Okay. My only thing with this is, let's assume for the sake of discussion that you are absolutely right about everything you just said. If you know how words change in the lexicon, English,
right, and that's why that's exactly words. But Jim, that's why Well, let me say real quick, that's why the colloquial definition is the way it is. But that does not mean it's going to change in formal academic settings. We don't change words in science because the layperson wants to have their own understanding of it, right? The word theory.
What if the vast majority of the English-speaking population has agreed that our definition of atheist is the correct one?
You need to convince the philosophers. Huh? You need to convince the philosophers and the academics.
But
Just
we're
like in science, you convince scientists.
Everyone else,
atheist
though?
is just a noun.
Why do we have to overwhelmingly
Because
convince them?
atheist is a philosophical term, just like theory is a scientific term, right? The term theory means a well-established body of evidence that has been repeated through observation and experimentation to provide an explanatory model and predictive modeling, right? Would you agree that's a paraphrase? But okay.
But if we
Wait. But in science, colloquialism, science can mean guess, or excuse me, theory can mean guess, right? So we don't hold to the colloquial meaning of theory, right? Because in science we adhere to scientific words for a reason. They have precision. The reason why I hold to formal academic words, such as atheism, is defined as the propositional state of the rejection of theism, because it's less vague. If he says I'm an atheist and he says he's an atheist, he could be somebody who just lacks a belief. Well, I can be an atheist that believes God doesn't exist. It doesn't differentiate between the two.
That's
why in philosophy it does differentiate. It says if you're an atheist, this is what it means.
Can I ask you a question?
I don't know enough
Can I ask you a
about this.
question? But what's more vague? A collection of a handful of stodule books.
Vestigial.
Vestigial. Vestigial or
he said
publications. Or what's more? What do you think is more meaningful to the everyday person talking about these things? People.
What I was going to say is
definition of something where it's easily understood by the majority of humanity that you speak to on a daily basis.
But does that make it sensical? I look at if I
want people to know what I'm talking about, I'm going to use the colloquial definition.
And that's fine. But when I use, and you can use any definition you want, I use the formal definition. And when I explain to somebody, this is the definition I use, all is well. As long as you understand what position you're coming from and somebody is able to understand where you're coming from, there is no argument to be had here. Right. You can prefer any definition you want to use. The argument seems to be when people say that is not how it's done in philosophy. They're absolutely wrong. I can cite you numerous sources on this. I mean, ad nauseum.
Not necessarily.
Okay, let me say this. In the 1950s, up until the 1950s, all English speakers up until then, throughout the entire history of humanity, cool meant something a little bit less than cold, but not quite warm.
But cool is not a philosophical word. It doesn't have an established meaning.
But cool became, there was a second definition that is more as common as the actual definition now, where when you say something's cool, it's just as common as the coldness definition, where it is something that is preferred.
Okay, let me give you another example. Let's take the word heat, for example. Okay, if I say something like this room retains heat, colloquially, that's kind of understood to mean that it gets warm quickly and it stores temperature, it stores heat, right? It stores energy. It gets hot. Would that what you would infer from that meaning, right? Okay, but in physics, that is a non sequitur. That is a nonsensical statement. I cannot say this room retains heat in physics because you cannot retain heat in physics. Heat, by definition, is the transfer of thermal energy from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. What you're saying is, hey, forget how it's used in science, forget how it's used in physics. Let's just use the colloquial version of heat because we like it better because people understand it more. I get that, right? I get that, but you can't fault me for saying no.
Language is the transmission of ideas so people understand one another. They're abstractions that we use arbitrarily to...
You're literally saying dumb down words for people.
An idea.
But you're literally saying stop using the actual established meaning of these words just because a layperson. Well, there is. No, there is. Heat means something literally in physics. It means by definition.
In our abstractions, there's no intrinsic, like words aren't magical. They like.
I didn't say there's intrinsic meaning, but there's well-established meanings within the guidelines of the parameter of the topic you're talking about. In science, heat means something. In philosophy, atheism means something. Now you can argue you don't like those definitions. Nothing wrong with that. But hang on. But to my why I'm agnostic, it's multiple fold. One, I accept formal definitions, but I think you guys can understand does exist, right? Those formal definitions they do exist, correct?
There are established. There are things that are established.
Okay, so I accept those. And two, my position on agnosticism is not much different than somebody who says I don't accept the theist claims. The only addition is I also don't accept the hard atheist claims. That's the only real difference. Epistemically, there's difference, but logically, syntactically, they are exactly the same. So let me ask you, what kind of atheist are you, if I can ask, if you don't mind?
Well, you would consider it a colloquial distinction, but I consider myself an agnostic atheist.
Okay. Do you hold that there are no gods in the entire universe?
Wait, you're gonna have to qualify that. You're gonna have to break that down a little more, though.
You're
pretty
saying,
simple. Do you think in their universe, there in the entire? Wait, TJ, listen. In the entire universe, do you think that at least one God exists?
What do you mean by do you think? Do I accept it? Do I know it to be true? Do I guess it?
This is not a complicated question. Do you think?
No, it is. We gotta nail down this. We gotta nail down this key point. By do you think? Do you mean do you know or do you hope?
If I said do you know, that'd be a different question.
So do
Courtney, hit him. You said you're gonna take care of him. Hit him.
Is it our hypothesis?
I needed to Jim translate. Remember?
I don't know.
Wait, okay. Can you ask me?
Yeah, I need you to translate for Jim. Remember?
Right. Go ahead.
We got to speak Jim speak.
Ask me your question.
Oh, you're awesome. To know something and to think something are completely different things. Okay, look, I can think something, and I don't have to have certainty, or I don't have to have knowledge, which is not the same thing either. Completely different things. I can think that there are no gods in the universe. I don't need to know that to make that statement. Okay, so TJ, what I'm asking you is, forget knowledge. Do you think that there is at least one God in the universe?
You're proposing, Jim.
Okay, no.
Can I play the game with you? He seems confused.
No, I want to answer. And
okay, go ahead.
I'm not convinced by the proposition. If someone stated there is a God, I wouldn't say no, there isn't. I would say I'm not convinced that proposition is true.
That's not my question, though.
That is a valid answer to that.
Sure, but that's not my question.
What he's saying is there's a level of certainty that you gain by your own worldview.
Yeah, that's
okay.
No, I'm not even saying that.
Look at which God if you're talking about a specific God that's described in, say, a holy book, I would say.
How about this?
I would have to find some certainty to the position that I don't see evidence for the particular God of, let's say, the Bible.
Right. No, I get that. TJ, do you believe 1 + 1 = 2?
Believe? What do you mean by believe?
Oh, good God.
I accept how math works, and yes, I would say that 1 + 1 = 2.
Okay, so you hold the belief that 1 + 1 = 2. You don't think that's wrong, right?
No, unless it was demonstrated somehow that reality didn't work the same as I once.
No, it's actually true by analytical definition, but it's
true. Accept that 1 + 1 = 2.
So you believe that 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, so do you, by the same thing that by saying I believe 1 + 1 = 2, can you say I believe no gods exist? Can you say that with some certainty, or you don't hold that?
Yes.
Okay, Courtney can.
Yes.
Really?
Okay, fair enough.
No shit.
I don't assign any certainty.
And you know what? And Courtney, get with me another time. I'll show you so many ways to justify that as unreal, because I think.
Wait.
Yeah,
belief is different than certainty.
Sure, absolutely.
But the way that I live my life and the worldview that I have doesn't include any gods, but it doesn't mean that I claim to know for sure that perspective.
Right, absolutely. I agree with you. And Courtney, you're spot on the mark here, and this is why I don't like.
What I'm trying to say is, ask me, because I think I understand what
I think you do too. Because this is why I don't like the docking scale. Remember, Jim brought up the docking scale. This is where I think he's getting confused, because he thinks that in order to say that you have to have certainty, be a strong atheist. He thinks means that you're certain. Forget that. It's wrong. Docking scale is crap. Everybody I know thinks that is crap, except for maybe.
I think it's discrediting to have a certain amount of certainty.
Yeah, that's fine. You can always have some kind of lacking certainty, but. This is my whole reason for this is I want atheists to be better at argumentation versus theist. And I do maintain that I think it is a much stronger epistemic position to say, I believe gods don't exist, and justify it with reason and give reason why you hold that position, and then to say, well, I just merely don't have a belief in it. I think it puts the atheist in a much stronger position.
Well, let me say
you can justify it.
It's more like, so I know that sometimes evidence of absence absence of evidence isn't evidence.
Oh, don't start with tropes. I can't stand tropes.
But sometimes that when evidence should be expected where there is none, then it is.
But it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You're going from A to B to potato. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's like you're saying how much stock I put in whether or not I can say whether or not God exists or not.
By the way, TJ, if you don't know this, you're one of my favorite people. I love listening to TJ. I really do. So let me ask you this. Yeah, Jim, not so much, but whatever. No, I'm kidding. We'll get to the Q&A.
By the amount of comments we're getting. Holy shit, we don't get this kind of chat list on our channel.
Well, first of all, why do you only have 18 watching? First of all the people in the live chat, go share this link. Ocean, come on, brother. Share this link.
Look at Ocean, dude. Look at all these chats on here. I just now noticed that.
Yeah. And Ocean. Oh, wait. Ocean's on my side on all this.
So, yeah. Oh, he is.
And he's a polytheist, by the way. Well, no.
So you know what? I'm not afraid to get my ass kicked live on camera. I've done it with Robert Rowe. Destroyed me on the Trinity. I mean, so
you met Ocean before.
Yeah, I know Ocean.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So let me get back to this real quick. TJ, let me ask you a question. What is it that doesn't convince you that there are no gods? I mean, do you hold a naturalism?
There's a lack of evidence. It's like I was saying.
No. There are no gods. Not that there is a god. That there are no gods.
I don't hold that position.
I know. What is preventing you from holding that position? What evidence do you need? Do you hold a naturalism?
Because I don't know everything.
Doesn't matter.
That's the reason why I can't say that I know that there are no gods.
It's irrelevant.
I don't think I can know that.
Okay. Do you hold a naturalism? Are you a naturalist?
Yeah.
Not methodological.
Okay,
yeah.
fair enough. I'm a methodological naturalist. I am not an ontological naturalist. I'm not a ontological philosophical naturalist.
Yeah, I'm not
none of that. But I'm like you. I'm a methodological naturalist, and I think that science should adhere to methodological naturalism.
Because it's the only way that we can. But there's only one reality we can test, the one that manifests to our senses. We have no mechanism to test the supernatural or.
I agree with you. Absolutely right. Yes.
Or whatever.
Yes, but okay. Do we have any naturalists here?
I guess I am.
Okay. So Courtney, so your worldview, and I don't mean atheism, but your worldview incorporates a lot of different positions. You're consistent right now, and let me explain to you why. If you're a naturalist, you adhere to the position there are no supernatural things, which God would be included.
No,
that's philosophical naturalism.
No, yeah, that's what I just said. I just asked if she's a philosophical naturalist.
I would agree that I live my life that way.
Yeah.
As if there isn't one, but I wouldn't say that I'm 100% sure about that. It's just that I personally have been convinced.
One thing I noticed that confuses a lot of people is that when you start talking about certainties and knowledge, don't use them in belief discussions. Just get rid of them for a while.
No, I agree. They're two different things.
Yeah, they're totally different things. Yeah. I can believe something and not know it. However, you cannot know something without believing it. So knowledge entails belief.
That there aren't any gods. Yes.
Yeah. So if I adhere to philosophical naturalism or ontological naturalism, I'm already in the position that I cannot accept there being gods. Correct?
Yes.
So I believe there are no gods. It's consistent worldview.
We have to say this world is the only thing that exists. Nothing can exist outside reality. Therefore, the supernatural can't exist.
Well, then why do you say you're a methodological naturalist?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with your definition.
Oh, okay.
What they are.
So, but Courtney's consistent right now because and this is what I'm saying, for an atheist to be consistent and going against a theist, one thing a theist will do is ping on any inconsistency you have. Because we all know, let's be realistic here, and I'm not talking about the Robert Rose, we're not talking about the high-end atheists that we really respect. We're talking about the bottom of the barrel, young earth creationists, bottom feeders. They will latch on to any freaking thing that you say.
Creationist cat.
Creationist cat? Did you say creationist cat? Vadim, your boss, creationist cat, he's dogging on him.
Oh shit!
Oh my God! You really just didn't say that, did you? Okay. Okay. So back on track. So her worldview is consistent, I think, because she is saying, I am a philosophical naturalist, and I believe there are no gods. Okay, great. That is consistent, and there's many arguments to be made why there are no gods. But TJ is unconvinced of this. Why is TJ unconvinced that there are no gods? What would make him be convinced there are no gods?
Because you have to demonstrate a claim, and if you can't demonstrate it, then you
don't have to demonstrate a claim to have a belief. Are there aliens? I don't have to demonstrate they're aliens to have a belief they're aliens.
If you're convinced of if your internal mechanism for determining conviction is sufficient by someone asserting something that, hey, such and such is this, and then through some fluke of physiology in your brain, you're like, okay, yeah, I can be on board with that. But there are some of us who are just a little bit more skeptical than that. We're going to be like, hey,
you're confused here. Look at, if I say I believe there's no, I believe there's aliens. Do I have to demonstrate to you there's no alien, or there are aliens to support my position? No, of course not.
Yes. Why
Yes,
would
you
you?
absolutely do.
Why would
I do
you?
not.
You don't have to.
Oh, you don't have to. We
You
don't
could
have to
just
be convinced at all.
You
Yeah.
could just
Because
make the
it's
claim.
his personal
No. I could be fully rational and fully justified to say I believe aliens exist and give you
And
my
they
own
can
reasoning
say,
for it. So it's like the Drake equation. I can give you the
Yes,
Drake
sir.
equation as my reasoning, but I don't have to give you physical evidence that aliens exist to support my belief. That's evidentialism, which I'm not. I'm a non-evidentialist.
Wait, so you're saying that you can say that you personally believe this, but to convince other people, that's when you need evidence?
Well,
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. If it matters to you whether or not
Wait,
you convince
wait,
anybody
is-
of what
can
you're
I
saying,
answer-
I mean.
Can you answer that? What?
evidence does not have to be empirical. Okay. The Drake equation is not empirical evidence, but I could use the Drake equation to make a
You're right.
rational argument, say probabilistically speaking, it is more likely that aliens exist and they don't exist.
Yes.
Right, but
I agree with
but
All right,
like,
so
you have to have a
TJ, you're killing me, bro. So he's a sober one. So hang on. So if I say I believe God's do not, oh, excuse me, I believe aliens exist, I don't have to demonstrate to you that aliens exist to be justified to make that claim. I do believe aliens exist. I'm
That's
perfectly
pretty-
justified to do that.
That's pretty
Right.
ballsy to
Wait,
say. I
wait.
can just say a thing
I
just
can't
based
hear
on
you.
a.
No, that's not. No, you're misunderstanding. Whenever you make a claim, you can justify, but you're confusing what's called epistemic justification with evidential justification. The burden of justification is what you need to make your reasoning or your belief reasonable and rational. That's what it means. It
Okay.
doesn't mean you have to demonstrate to somebody else that your belief is true. That's not the same thing as. So when you're saying I have an epistemic burden, that is first to myself to recognize that my beliefs are comport with reality or have whatever framework I'm using with. There's many different types of theory of knowledge and theories of justification and all that crap. But I can say with certainty, I am justified to believe a certain thing and give you evidence for it that I think is sufficient enough to warrant that. And it doesn't have to be physical evidence. It doesn't have to be.
In other words, you're trying to say that you should be able to justify a position through pure argumentation if it's epistemically.
Well, so that's rationalism. Right? Hume said that rationalism and empiricism can go together, and I agree. I don't think there's a dichotomy between empiricism and rationalism. I think that both of them work equally well with each other, and I don't think we have to have something for our five senses to say something is true, right? And by the way, you can invite. By the way, you can invite Ocean in here. I'm happy to have him come in if you don't mind.
I think the distinction you're making is that there's a difference between trying to explain what convinces you and trying to explain what should convince other people.
And that might be true. That might be true. But here's the thing. If it convinces me, why can't I use that same line of reasoning to try to convince somebody else?
Well, that's what I'm asking is why are you making that distinction?
Well, I mean, it's probably easier to convince I'm what's called a dostastic and voluntarist. I don't think that we choose our beliefs. I believe that the beliefs choose us. Okay. But if I say, hey, Courtney,
definitions
of what?
Of between what convinces you and what should convince other people.
He thinks it should be the same thing as what he's trying to.
Well,
Yeah,
not necessarily.
earlier you
Not
were-
necessarily. But look, if I say, Courtney, I believe aliens exist, and you say, Steve, why do you believe aliens exist? And I say, well, here's the Drake equation. And if you put forth the stick in the numbers here, I can make a rational probabilistic argument that is more likely the case. It's a belief. It's not a knowledge claim. It's not a certainty claim. But it's more likely the case that aliens exist. Therefore, I hold to the belief that I believe aliens exist. Is that not a rational line of thought?
Yes, it is.
How many alien races have we met? You have no scale to base the
Don't stop
probability.
it. Where's he going? Where's he going?
TJ, you're killing me, bro.
No, I'm with you.
This is
I'm
the
with
same
you.
thing.
Courtney's getting it. Okay, good.
You know what I mean? Like,
Wait a
The
minute.
equation
Wait a
is
minute, TJ.
subjective. It could
Just
be
let him finish his point.
All right,
What do you-
Ocean, can you guys send Ocean a link? I wouldn't mind him coming in here. This is 3 against 1 here. I love my boy Ocean. Yeah, Ocean, we'll get you a link. Cool.
No, it's 2 against 2.
Oh yes. Okay. So
Ocean, put your email. No, you want to put your email address in the?
Okay, so I'm
In
with
the
you on
chat.
aliens. Keep going.
all right. And by the way, too, I'm not trying to cut you off, but you're going down rabbit holes here, and that's the only reason why I'm like, just hang tight.
That's more to say.
Okay.
Okay.
So now when it comes to the God position, an atheist is perfectly fine by saying, I believe gods do not exist. I believe there are no gods. They don't exist. Theism is false. Atheist can be perfectly justified to hold that position. If they don't know how to do it, contact me. I'll give them reasoning behind it. I'll give them some good arguments. And you can go to a theist and give you an argumentation why there are no gods. Isn't that a stronger position than saying, I just don't believe you? Because you look weak then.
Position
but debate-wise, to take on the burden of proof, that's the distinction that people often make.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
I'm not going to make a positive claim.
Oh, you're frozen. Oh, crap. They froze. All right. And in this corner, we have Ocean, Keltoy, and myself. We're going to be singing Oklahoma for you today. Oklahoma. No, I can't sing. They're going to be back. Ocean?
I'm pretty certain that this is,
here they are.
Is not true. This is
I'm here, man.
Jim?
Or whatever.
Sorry, you guys froze. You guys back? You good? Oh, shoot. They froze again. Uh-oh.
Amorphous. Amoeba.
I don't know what the hell they're saying.
I understand your view on how that's different from atheist, right? But if amoeba or asymmetrical means not symmetrical,
are we back to an etymological fallacy again?
No. Listen, no. I'm about to go to. I'm probably going to go to a fallacy of ad populum.
Argumentum ad populum.
Yeah, argumentum ad populum. All right, so I'm probably going to go to a fallacy, but not the etymological. All right, so if that means what it means there, and we use it what it means here on atheism, and if 51% of the English-speaking population admits nowadays, maybe atheism meant something different back in ancient Greek times. But what if rock? If 51% of the if 51% of the English-speaking population agreed that rock is now widget, and you kept holding true to the proposition that rock is rock, and we all start calling it widget, who's wrong?
Yeah, I don't go by what the popularity contest is. I go by what it is in philosophy. I go by what science is in science.
Language is
so wait, Jim, are you saying you think rocks are atheist?
Oh, you son of a bitch! No.
Okay, well, you know what? I know atheists who will say that. Bionic Dance is one of them.
Well, okay, you have to know the argument before you can make a decision. So little babies and rocks cannot be atheists.
Well, actually, if you
have to be aware of the proposition.
If you define it as anything without a belief, but anyways, so here's the thing though. But here's the thing.
Bionic Dance makes the argument that it's just lacking the belief, and that's all you need in an atheist.
Well,
therefore, rocks, potted plants,
he's not supported on this position,
and babies are atheists.
Yeah,
I mean that's the argument that she makes.
But Steve, if the rest,
I don't agree with all the premises of it. You know what I mean?
I don't either.
If the rest of the world, if everyone except you agreed that atheism meant just free from or lack of a belief,
I would feel the same exact way. My position. What the hell? Oh my God! What the hell happened to you, Ocean?
You're
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, I just shaved my head.
Yeah, I noticed. You
nice, dude. That looks hardcore.
Yeah, dude. I'm actually jealous.
Just switching up my looks. So.
Steve,
dude, that's like Breaking Bad shit.
I'm intimidated.
Letting the beard grow out and everything. So awesome. I'm becoming Viking as fuck.
Awesome. So real quick, I mean, because you guys are talking about shifting the burden of proof and all this kind of stuff. And I was going to ask this from an outside point of view. Let's say TJ and Courtney have a discussion on God. If TJ is sitting there going, well, I just don't believe you, and Courtney's making all the argumentation for why there's a God, and TJ's just sitting back going, I don't believe you. Who the hell wants to listen to that? We want to see, TJ, why you believe what you believe.
Can I interject and try and explain
the
position
yes,
I was trying
to
talk about earlier?
Yeah, what's their show? They can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking them.
Go for it, man.
Okay, so what Steve was trying to say earlier is that you can rationally hold the position of there are no gods as long as you have an argument to support it, or you can rationally hold the position that there are gods or God if you have an argument to support it. Now, there's lots of arguments that Christians have put forward to philosophically be able to say, I rationally support this position. And there are arguments that atheists have put forward to say, I rationally support the position that there are no gods. And you can hold to, or even counter arguments to theistic arguments that say, well, because of this problem with monotheism, specifically classical monotheism is usually part of the conversation. Because of this argument against it, I reject the claim of monotheism. So, and then they can therefore say, that there isn't a monotheistic God, at least not the one that's described in the monotheistic arguments.
It's like when you're describing a specific God, it's like then I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't see any evidence for that deity. So I would be.
It's not about not seeing evidence. It's there's evidence against it.
Yeah.
Or in the case of contradictory evidence, of course, yeah.
Well, not even it's let's see. A good argument is problem of evil against the classical monotheist.
Yeah,
gods.
that's for a local.
It's a really good one to put up against monotheism and to say, well, if you're going to say that your God is omnibenevolent, we need to explain for evil, and there's not really a good explanation. And in fact, the existence of evil is a huge counter to an omnibenevolent God that is the major source of power and the source of creation for the universe.
You explain that away, though.
Yeah, actually, Ocean. They
try to explain it away. It's when you point that it's like if it's a direct contradiction, either God is, there's the problem of evil. There's that list of decisions that God has to make. It's either that he's willing but not able. At which point he's not omnipotent.
Ocean,
so on.
So,
like you got to bite one of those horns.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. However, let me throw the caveat that is an argument against a very specific type of deity, as you said, the omnibenevolent.
It's an argument against an omnibenevolent one.
Now, I would make the assertion that given that particular argument, and along with other arguments, such as like the problem of divine hiddenness and other counter arguments against theism, if you add all those arguments up, I think an atheist could make a very strong argument by saying, look, we've knocked down all these types of positions of gods. We have arguments against all of them. And they could be fine in justifying their belief that God does not exist if they assert that, right? But I also think that somebody like myself, it may not convince. I might say, well, I'm convinced that this particular God doesn't exist. I'm convinced that this particular God doesn't exist, but I cannot justify holding the belief that no gods exist, right?
Yeah.
I think that you could hold either position, atheism or theism, abductively.
I do as well. No, absolutely. I completely think you could make an abductive argument for it. Yes.
Like you can, the argument that I use for polytheism is abductive. So, I don't know if you've heard me do the neighborhood cat thing, but, if you can make an abductive inference and say, look, there are gods, or you can make an abductive inference and say, there are no gods, and hold those positions rationally, using abductive inferences. But if you want to try and say, just because you have a consistent argument doesn't necessarily mean that it reflects reality. It just means that it's coherent with reality.
Yeah, I see, but it doesn't have to. I mean, it depends if you go for coherence theory of truth or you go for correspondence theory of truth. Whatever your theory of truth is, that makes a difference of how you determine what the truth is. I
think that foundationalism is best when you have.
I'm a foundationalist.
Dealing with empiricism. I think that coherentism is great when you're looking at theism.
But coherentism has, but here's the problem. I think
coherentism has problems, obviously.
Yeah, and so I don't like the circularity of coherentism, and I would migrate into found-herentism eventually. I think, but. I
like found-herentism, but when we're talking about theism, atheism or theism, when you're trying to get there, you almost have to be a coherentist.
Yeah, we're doing philo speak, and we've lost everybody.
Equally, I think.
Yeah. I agree.
All I know about abductive reasoning is Sherlock Holmes. He uses abductive reasoning to he uses abductive. He uses
abductive is a type of inductive argument.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes uses abductive reasoning when he looks you over and he decides that
he deduces things.
No, that's the thing. It's abductive because he makes it.
Let me explain if I can. The difference between inductive, abductive, and deductive. Deductive argument doesn't give you any more information. It only takes the information you have and forms a syllogistic approach to make something to be true, conclusion to be based on the premises. Yeah, an inductive argument tries to incorporate new information. Okay, it doesn't actually have to hold. Obviously, this.
Right. It could be right. It could be wrong. It could be all. Yeah. It's a lot of guesswork.
But a deductive argument, if the premises are true, right, and it's logically valid, right, if the structure is sound,
it could be valid
or something. Right, it can be valid and not sound, but if it's valid and sound, there's also a third people kind of tend to forget, which I actually like. Convincing.
Proving that something is sound can be a mountain.
Real bitch.
Mountain, so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, I happen to like valid, sound, and convincing. Yeah, you can have a logical, valid, sound argument, but it may not be convincing to somebody.
Yeah.
Right?
You can be convinced by like for me, when you're getting into holding the position of atheism or holding the position of theism, you are dealing with a valid argument generally. And that doesn't, I mean, we're like a theist and an atheist that are getting in, that are like both very knowledgeable about their positions, will probably both admit to each other, hey, you know, you have a valid position, but we're arguing about whether or not it's reality.
Yes, I agree with that. And let me go on record here.
Positions would then therefore be rational, is what I'm saying.
So this video is what your go back to video. So let me get on record of saying either definition, any definition you use for atheism, go for it. I am not advocating that you have to use one specific definition. I don't care. Use any definition.
What I was trying to tell you earlier is like, look,
let me get this out here because I'm going on record here. I want people to know my position. I don't care what definition you use. You can use any. There's multiple definitions out there. My only single argument is stop telling me what definition to use. Because I don't tell you what definition to use. That's my biggest argument from day one. If an atheist wants to use a negative position, a lack of belief position, God bless you, do what you got to do. I think it's you know, poor, but I don't care how you define something. When I get upset,
says, I'm an atheist. Are you gonna correct them?
And I get upset is when somebody tells me my position, because that they have no right to do.
Yeah.
So let me define the way I want to define words that fit my position, and I'll allow other people to do the same. That's all I've ever asked from day one.
So what's your position?
I'm so confused now. I don't know.
I stepped out.
No, my position
is an agnostic unless you talk about himself. He considers himself a god in some senses.
I'm my own god according to G-Man. Let me ask. Well, hang on. Ocean.
If you talk to G-Man,
Ocean, let me ask you something. You've known me for quite some time now. Has my argument in this, have anything I've said ever changed from day one? Have I been inconsistent in any way?
Sometimes you've argued that if you're going to be engaging in philosophical talk, then you should use an accepted philosophical definition.
You don't have to. There's a difference.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, you're providing an ought, and has to do with the goal of the conversation. I think that the definition that you argue for is best when having this conversation, because it prevents people from talking past each other. I'm using atheist, but I mean agnostic kind of position as far as like the philosophical definitions that we're using results in a lot of talking past each other and a lot of a lack of clarity in definition as far as like what claim you're holding. Because I prefer talking about this subject when we're talking about what claims are being held. And if you're not holding a claim, then as agnostic is the position that makes the most sense to me as a descriptor.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
If someone comes to you and says, okay, agnosticism is a position on knowledge and atheism is a position on belief, and they're not mutually exclusive.
I reject it.
Yeah, I reject it. I think they're bad definitions. I don't think they help in the conversation.
If the 51%,
like, you want to say that we can't know it, fine, I'll agree with you, and then we can just try and move on from the conversation from there. Everyone's agnostic.
Well, I don't want you to correct you. I mean, if that's how you want to define those things, that's how you can define it. Talking to TJ, do you guys understand each other?
I'm more mean in the conversation than Steve is.
But if Ocean and I are having a conversation, we already accept the same definitions. When I use a word with Ocean, he knows what I'm talking about, and when he uses a word, I know what he's talking about. We can communicate that way.
And then our conversations can be productive at that point,
and
which is really the most valuable part.
Yes.
Either I have to conform to your definition, or you have to do the same, likewise to me. But
I can work with either one, to be honest with you.
I can't.
Yeah. Same with
and
me,
this
right?
is where I disagree with Steve.
I don't like to, but I could if I had to.
Right. I mean, it's possible, but the problem is that we wind up in a situation in which we're using definitions that don't cover what we're talking about. Because when you're just saying atheist is a lack of, and that includes holding the claim and not holding the claim at the same time, it's like, well, why are you? We have a set of definitions. We can use two words for this.
I hold zero claims about gods. I hold zero claims about gods. I've never made a claim about a god.
In a conversation with me, I'd say, well, as far as I'm concerned, you're holding an agnostic position because you're not making any claims.
So as long as I said, okay, for the purposes of the next discussion, for the next 2 hours with me and Ocean Keltoy, I am now officially an agnostic, you would be cool with that?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would result in a productive conversation.
Because I got some more road to cover.
Well, and here's
I think that there's hold on. I think that there's an interesting thing with this, with David Silverman's kind of idea about atheism coming into it, because he's using atheism as a political identifier, which is somebody that is more of a secularist.
Yeah.
And so anybody that is not acting with religion as something that's moving them forward in life, whatever, that's somebody that is an atheist under his worldview or under his definition. And he's using it as saying, well, if people did this as a political identifier, then we could make more movements as a political group. Yes. So for what he's saying works best from an activism angle. But when we're talking about from a examining beliefs angle or talking about what claims are being made, then his method just kind of flies out the window because it becomes
I agree.
It becomes murky.
And you know what, if somebody wants to make the argument that it's a better way to go for demographics or for normalization of the word atheism, that's a good argument. I don't accept it, but it's a better argument than what I've heard other people say when they talk about, oh well, I'm just going to reject what you say, because then it goes to the okay, well, why have a conversation with you if you're not even going to tell me what you believe? Oh, you don't have a belief on this? Okay, conversation's done.
Well, we can all agree that if you conglomerate all of them, the secularists, the humanists, the ones that describe that identify as atheists, the agnostics, all the unaffiliated, as a religious demographic is growing faster than
the nuns.
Well, I don't call them nuns because
they're nuns. I like nuns. I'm a nun. You're a nun.
O-N-E-S. It's an N-U.
You don't have to be celibate if you're a nun. Just remember that, okay?
Right.
No, I'm about to get you on terminology. Ready, Steve?
Go ahead.
Celibate means you don't get married. Chaste means you don't have sex.
True.
Fair enough. You know what? I'm all the above. It doesn't really matter.
We go with you. Hey, you celibate?
I got him. I got the.
I'm also technically a virgin, from what I understand, because I've never been penetrated.
You're definitely a virgin.
Yeah, definitely a virgin. Ocean tries, but yeah.
Well, look at you, man. Of course you're a virgin. No, I'm just joking.
Don't hate. You know what?
Let's get to this. Dawkins talked about two types of agnostics: taps and paps. There are temporary agnostics in practice, what I would consider TJ and I, and there are paps, permanent agnostic in principle. The ones that say, basically, we can never know if there's a God or not, and throw their hands up, and it's equated to an atheist, one that just doesn't care or knows that we can never know the answer.
Yeah, there's something called apathy. There's something called apatheistic agnosticism.
That's a pap, according to Dawkins. He's a permanent agnostic in principle.
I fall into what's called temporal or zero data agnosticism.
A temporary agnostic in practice.
And I think it's perfectly fine for somebody to use agnosticism as a transition. If people are coming out of theism and they don't jump right into atheism because they don't, for whatever reason, whether it be stigma, family, or they won't actually think that atheism is, as I like to use, the belief that theism is false. If they don't want to jump directly into that, they could migrate from theism to agnosticism to an atheism, and it takes away some of that shock. And I think by eliminating that position, as I see certain atheists do, I think they're doing a disservice to people. Myself, that's personally to me. I think that if some people if your goal is to try to quote deconvert people, which is not my intent, but your guys' I think might be, then to take away that transition zone may not be. It may be counterproductive to your goal.
I'm not an evangelist, but he is. He's
Hail Satan, right? Hail Satan? Oh.
No, I don't care if anyone ever changes. Now, I've written 2 books. I've written 2 books, and I've gotten multiple emails from people saying, you changed my life, and I'm now an atheist. I did not expect that, nor did I was not looking, that was not my goal. And yeah, I don't care if anyone changes their mind. I have no desire to change someone's mind, but when he talks, he's a firebrand. He is
I know.
Try to change minds.
All I is like when somebody tries to say, look, there's this one book that I read. It's like the only book I've ever read. Like there are other books out there that you should read. Like,
TJ, let me put forth just to you. If your goal is to deconvert people, I'm telling you, and I mean this very sincerely, you might want to consider this. I really think taking a stronger position of atheism is beneficial to your argumentation to try to convince people that theism is not true. Because if you just sit back and say, hey, I just don't believe you, you're not giving them any reason to
I don't know
deconvert.
if he's saying that theism is not true when he's holding his position. He seemed to be
doesn't say
over
it's
the
not
idea
true.
that it
He's
is
taking-
possible.
I mean, I'm more on the side of, I don't believe you. And
Well, then that doesn't give them any reason to
Well,
not.
then what's the problem? Hold on, wait. Then what's the problem with people believing it? If you're out there trying to convert people away from some
not
sort of
giving them any reason
theism,
not to.
but you're holding that it's just as likely.
Yeah, you're not giving them any reason to deconvert from theism. You're just saying, I don't believe you. They're like, okay.
I want him to answer that. Like, why is he doing this if he thinks that either is likely?
Yeah.
What's your motivation?
If you think that
But
this is
Steve,
likely,
let him
that,
answer.
okay. Sorry, Ocean. I don't like when you get mad. I see your furrow.
I know. I'm like, wait, no, what's going on here? What's his motivation?
It's an attempt to be intellectually honest and not like try to assert and be certain things that I'm.
But if one is logically honest, you're saying that either is likely. So why stop people from believing?
It's not necessarily the stopping them from believing. It's there are better mechanisms to arrive at truth about reality than to just believe what is written in one book.
That's not.
If the only reason why they're believing is because they read the Bible, that's fine. But I don't think that that's where a lot of Christians are coming from.
No, it's comfortable. It's a carrot and stick kind of like situation.
Sometimes it's that. Sometimes they had an experience. Sometimes it's a relationship with their family. If what they're believing? Let's say that Christianity is possible. It seems to be that you hold that position. Why are you trying to convert people away from it if it's possible to be true?
Saying it's impossible doesn't mean I'm also asserting at the same time that it's possible. Those are
if you're not saying it's impossible,
then
what's your argument? That's a true dichotomy. I mean, that is a true dichotomy. If you're saying it's not impossible, then you are therefore saying it's possible.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can't have one without the other. If you say it's not impossible, you are literally saying coextensively that it's possible.
And if you're saying that you also don't know the position of atheism, or you're not willing to make any arguments for it,
it's impossible. Then is what I'm saying. Why do I have to commit to saying no? There are no gods, and I think it's impossible that there are.
Well, you're trying to convert people away from something that may be the case.
Yeah.
But you're not going to argue against it, though.
I think any genuine person, though, would see that as intellectually dishonest.
But do you think a theist is going to say, "Oh, you don't believe me"? I'm going to turn away from theism.
Dishonest. Wait, Steve, I want to chase him down for a second. Seeing what is intellectually dishonest? Are you talking about my argument or yours?
No, to say you're saying. So why don't you just say it's impossible? You're saying it's possible.
I do think Christianity is impossible, but
I don't hold that.
Why? And if you don't think it's impossible, why are you trying to pull people away from something that may be the case?
Well, because
let's say Christianity is true and you can't prove it, and Christians are
gain for society to not be led around by dogma.
Well, let's say that Christianity is true and there's no way to prove it. You're trying to pull people away from the afterlife, then.
Damn you, TJ.
Damn you, TJ.
You're sending people to
she
hell.
makes a great point on this, TJ. I try to pull people out of flat earthing on creationism. Why? Because I can demonstrate that they're wrong. Those are not possible positions because they've been demonstrated to be falsified. The evidence is overwhelming that they're wrong. Okay, so I try to pull people out of that. But you're now saying, well, you know what? Yeah, Christianity be true, whatever. I have no argument why Christianity is not true. I have no argument why I believe.
I mean, it seems like his position breaks down to just I don't like Christianity,
or I don't believe the theist. Okay, well, who cares? The theist is going to say, "Who cares? You don't believe me, whatever."
But it's an oversimplification, maybe. But is it more than that?
Yeah.
But what is the more than that?
Yeah, what's more then?
What do you mean?
You're saying that it's possible that it's true. But you're saying that you want to convert people away from it, even though it may be the case.
No, I see it as a net gain for humanity.
In what sense?
Aren't led around. Well, like I just told you, if people aren't led around by one particular vile publication written in text 2,000 years ago, that
you don't have to say that Christianity is true.
It is an atheistic position on my part. I think that religion does harm. Why is that? Why is that not a just reason to want to?
Saying that it does harm, even though it may be true.
But even if it does harm, doesn't have any validity on if it's true or not. It can cause harm. It's still be true.
Hold on, your value isn't on whether or not people believe true things. Your value is whether or not people are believing something that's harmful.
Right.
So if something is true and it's harmful, then you still want people to not believe it.
Yes.
One's a claim on existence. One's a claim on what kind of harm does it do to humanity.
Yeah, they're two.
I would rather go though.
The disconnect is right there, where it's like, because a lot of times atheists are saying, "Well, I want to believe true things," but TJ is saying that's not his value.
It doesn't matter, right?
Exactly. True things. He wants people to believe things that aren't harmful.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Because I want to believe true things. But you're literally saying it doesn't matter to you if it's true or not. You're going by the
Hold on, what are your response? Because I mean, you can extrapolate all we want to, but I want to hear what he's saying about that.
I think you're trying to lump them in together. I don't think that those two things are exclusive.
Lump what in together?
Like whether or not the truth of them is correct or not has nothing to do with whether or not it's bad.
I think it's valuable to people
they do in religion. Things that people do in the name of gods are sometimes harmful to human beings. Those are two separate. Those are two separate.
What people do in the name of gods is sometimes harmful.
Aren't they?
Sure.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I do believe that. I agree with you. But we're talking about whether or not it's true and whether or not the belief in true things is a value of yours.
Right. So
but here's the thing. Look, belief in true things, I think, is more important than what causes harm, because I think that you're right. I think that believing untrue things can cause more harm. So instead of being the focal point of why you want somebody to change their belief, it isn't so much because of the harm being done. It's because their belief is untrue, which is causing the harm. That's a more consistent way of approaching it, I think.
It feels like you're trying to nail me down to like 100% certainty of like saying,
forget certainty. I told you.
Like I know for a fact that this is wrong. I can't.
GJ, you got to stop using that word certainty. I think.
But I don't think you do. I don't think you're being honest and saying, no, I think it's impossible. Well, I don't think you have any way.
I'm certain that the Christian image of God is not true.
And I'm certain that the earth is not flat, and I'm certain that the young earth creationist model is wrong.
Right, and I think I'm on board with that. When you're talking about like a specific description of a deity,
right? When we're talking about religion,
the Bible is and I'm saying,
we've said Christianity like several times in this conversation. So when you're saying that it's still possible, and you're converting people away from it, not because it's not true or not because you don't believe that it's true, but because
I never said that I wasn't.
I think Jim wants to say something.
Yeah, I see Jim like waving his hand around.
He's having a stroke.
But he said that it's not because it's not true.
I know, and I differ than Ocean on this particular point. I think a little bit, but I think his reasoning is sound. I think Ocean's spot on in his reasoning. I just don't know if I concur with his conclusions because of it. But he's not giving you unsound information. But I think it's very difficult to say that Christianity is impossible. I think it's a high epistemic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's his claim. That's his deal.
Right, but I'm definitely like,
it's not that. That's not the criticism I'm making. The criticism that I'm making is that it seems like he doesn't care whether or not it's true.
He doesn't. Yeah, TJ's being inconsistent there because, look, you can't say that you value truth and then say, you know what? I don't care if Christianity is true or not. I'm looking at the harm it does.
Discount something's possibility when you can't demonstrate that it could be that it's impossible.
I can demonstrate that Christianity is wrong right now.
And that's
Christianity is not true.
That's a bold claim.
Yeah, that's a bold claim. Again, I differ in the notion.
The Christian image of God contains a logical incoherentism in the Trinity.
Like it's impossible. Fuck this shit. It's all bullshit.
Yeah, right. The reason why, one of the big reasons why I don't believe. Let me maybe make the case if you're going to say it's bold. The big reason why I don't believe in Christianity, or that one of the reasons why I argue against Christianity, is that the Trinity is a logical incoherent claim.
Yeah,
where you have the idea.
Well, not all Christianity adheres to the Trinity.
When you get into non-Trinitarian Christianity, I have less of an issue. But a lot of the harmful versions of Christianity are Trinitarian, right?
So you're okay with like Mysterianism? So you think that's okay?
Strict monotheism, I have less problems with, but I still think that there's arguments that can be made against it that are really, really bad.
Yeah.
We were talking about the problem of evil earlier, but with general Christianity, when we're talking about the Trinity, it is logically incoherent as a description of God.
No, that's a fair argument to make, but that's not what they originally said. You're talking. You're not saying about all of Christianity. You're talking about a very specific type of Christianity that you believe is impossible. And I might agree with you.
The vast majority of Christianity.
I'm not a Trinitarian.
Catholic. They're Trinitarian.
I'm not Trinitarian. Obviously, I mean clearly, I never was, and I do think the Trinitarian is an incoherent concept. I do believe that the only even possible way
a person we want to talk about Mormonism, there's other fucking problems with it, right?
Well, hang on. No. I think the only possible way somebody can hold a Trinitarian view and be rational enough to do it is what's called Mysterianism, because that is basically the approach is, yeah, we don't understand it, but what the fuck?
Still, I mean, I think that's bullshit, because then you're just saying,
I agree.
Incoherent. We're just gonna.
I agree.
There's some other answer to it. Please.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Then don't use that description of God, the one that's logically incoherent. Just don't do it.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with you on that. I think it's logically incoherent as well. But anyway, so Jim, he's going to die here if he doesn't get his hand.
Yeah, let's go ahead, Jim.
Courtney has a question for you guys.
Go for
okay, so here's the deal. We have less than an hour left.
We're doing this the rest of the night. This is fun.
No, TJ's only got 30 minutes left. I think Courtney's got to leave soon.
Okay.
So we have at the most an hour left. So I want to get to some speed round, like bonus questions. So for the next 10 minutes, let's just tap out all our saved rounds on this entire issue, and then we're going to get to speed round questions.
Okay.
So we'll just wait on this, and for now, let's just go 10 more minutes and put a bow on this. And for once and for all, forever, let's just agree to disagree or agree to agree for the next 10 minutes.
All right. Well, also my thing, I mean, I'm an agnostic. I don't like when people call somebody else something different. If you say you're an atheist, I'll call you an atheist. I think it's disingenuous for a Christian to say there are no atheists. I'm going to call you a theist because all men know God exists because of Romans. That's a dishonest position. For somebody to call me an atheist, it's a dishonest position because I am not using their definitions. And if they can't be respectful enough in a conversation to at least accept the definitions I'm using, which are legit definitions, they're not something that are stipulative. I mean, these are formal definitions you can find in academics. Then I don't really want to have a conversation with that person because I think they're being dishonest at that point. And I could go the whole conversation without ever talking the word or using the word atheism, just by going with concepts and just by saying, okay, I don't accept there are no gods and I don't accept there are gods. I'm agnostic on the proposition.
I'm assuming it's worked for you favorably up till now, right? So that's why
it's been real. You know what? The vast, I got to tell you, I did a poll. About 75% of the atheists I know are on board with this.
Okay.
I think that atheism generally is a claim against classical theism rather than against any God concept.
This is generally what I find among
grounds on this entire issue.
Well, let me just say this is if the people that actually are more into philosophy tend to take this stance than those that don't bother with it. I just want to, we're going to talk about atheism, but I don't want to talk about the philosophy of it. So you're going to find there's a dichotomy there, and that's fine. But as long as somebody says, yeah, Steve's position is coherent, it's rational, it's not like it's something he's made up. And it's the same position that Ocean has, same position that Sock Account has, same position that a lot of atheists I know have. That's fine.
Ad populum. What is the fallacy?
No. I'm not saying that. No,
an argument to authority, but
no, it's more. Yeah, but that's fine.
I think that really the conversation that's being had here is an argument to practicality of the conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that, because an argument about populum is saying I believe X is true because the population believes that way. That's not the argument. So don't confuse these fallacies, because when you throw out fallacies and you get them wrong, a theist is going to say, this fucker guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't call out something on a fallacy unless you are certain they're committing it. I'm telling you, it looks really weak in conversation.
Agree with you just on the pure fact that they agree with you doesn't make your position even more solid. Correct.
Well, if there are authorities on it, then it might.
The reason why they agree with him has to do with practicality and utilitarian.
Yeah, exactly.
From here on out, every time I talk to Steve, I will identify myself as just a pure agnostic, I guess.
Oh, I don't give a shit what the hell you identify as. You could be an attack helicopter
for the purpose of conversation with Steve.
I refuse to rename my show Agnostic Edge, motherfucker. So just so you know.
Yeah, it doesn't make very much sense, because you are atheist from a political definition, as far as Silverman's definition.
Yeah, from Silverman's definition, you are.
Explain.
Yeah, Silverman's definition is a political identity for atheism is anybody who's secular or just irreligious.
Yeah, and we'll have him on soon. I mean, you saw when we had Pam Whistle on from the American Atheist. She's going to be a regular on our podcast, and she's amazing. I like her a lot.
Firebrand, and he does it for the views.
I'm not a big fan, but Pam I like. Pam I like. I got to admit, she's a pistol.
Cool. All right, Ocean, do you have anything more saved rounds on this issue before we move on?
Wait, more what?
Do you have any saved rounds? Anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, we can move on. I think I've made my point.
You got anything else?
No.
Courtney?
I missed half.
We sing Kumbaya now?
This next question is for Ocean. Go ahead, Courtney. This is the speed round.
Uh-oh.
Do it.
Who is your greatest influence as a non-believer?
I'm not a non-believer.
You're a believer?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
a theist. He's actually a
I'm
polytheist.
Yeah, this entire time. How did I not know?
I don't know.
I read the signs when he
You
was
did?
trying to, yeah.
Because he's describing definitions. I had no idea he was a believer. Okay, who is your greatest influence as a believer then?
Right now it's John Michael Greer. He's a polytheist philosopher that's part of the order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids.
Who was your influence when you were first coming into the fold?
I wasn't really looking up to any thinker. I was reading history.
Okay, what type of
from a history? I mean, I think that as far as influence on my way of thinking is in history, I'd refer to Ronald Hutton and H.R. Ellis Davidson.
Nice.
Both of which have written a lot about the subjects that I'm interested in.
All right, Steve. Who's your biggest influence now and when you were first coming up?
Well, I mean, historically, I mean, obviously, I think, you know, scientifically, I love things like Isaac Asimov. I love Penrose. I love Nordstrom. I love Heinlein. I mean, I like all the things that got me into science and science fiction. But as far as like my Gnosticism, I know this is going to sound slightly egotistical, but I think my biggest influence was myself, because I formulated on my own accord what my position actually is. Now, I had some influences. Obviously, I hate to say it, but Ozymandias Ramses II had a huge influence on, you know, how one formulates their epistemic positions, and he was, you know, great in his conversations with Arndt, and I think that had a lot to do with it, because 3 years ago I didn't know any about this stuff. You know, I was not philosophically minded. I thought it was a joke. My background, as people may know, was in nuclear technologies. You know, so I had a scientific background of sorts, but not a philosophical one, and I had to learn over the last 3-4 years a little bit about philosophy, just so I can understand the concepts and the ideas that were being discussed. And so, yeah, I think that, and also, I mean, I like, let's see, I like Hitchin, obviously. You know, I do think the Hitch is just fantastic. I mean, how can you not like him? Let's be realistic. I'm not a big fan of like the Richard Dawkins kind of stuff. I don't like his approach.
He could read you the phone book and you'd be in love with him.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm sure he's a nice guy, and biology great, you know, but I don't like his approach to atheism, and I don't like the atheism plus kind of stuff. Oh yeah, no, the Hitch
could read you. That's what I'm saying. Read you the phone book.
He was one of the best debaters of all time. Seriously, he just could debate.
I did like watching Hitchens debate.
Absolutely.
Even as a from the theistic side, Hitchens was very good.
Steve, you kind of beat me to the punch. I was going to go into your background as a nuclear physicist, but
not a physicist. Technology, big difference.
Okay.
I took nuclear physics. I had to study atomic physics.
Marine. All I know is that you were a nuke tech in the Navy, which is
applied nuclear.
Well, he's Navy too, so he can back me up on this. That is the highest attrition rate of any school in any
military
branch of the armed forces.
I would have been a nuke. I scored like a 99 on the ASVAB, but
you did too. High five, 99.
You were 99 on the ASVAB.
Yeah,
me too.
Wow. I had to go to
dude, you're the third person I've ever met that got a 99. I know a couple people got 98.
I got 99.
You did not, did you?
I got a 99 on the ASVAB.
No shit. We have 3 people in the room right here that got 99 on the ASVAB.
What's the odds of that?
Pretty damn slim, because that's like getting a perfect score in your SAT.
Well, I got my full choice. Of course, being a Marine, I can't go nuke. So the next biggest washout rate of any school is languages. And I applied for Arabic and Korean and washed out. And so I got Spanish. So I'm not as smart as you, but now here's my question. Having undeniably, you cannot discount this. You have a crazy higher IQ than your average population. Does that have anything to do with how you see the world? Or can someone with a normal average 100 IQ see the world the same as you?
Well,
or is it specific to just
you have a high IQ, dude. If you got a 9 on your ASVAB, that translates, and if you can actually look this up, it translates to about 145 or higher.
I'm 138.
Yeah, okay, so it's about right, about 140. If you got a 99, that you're in that bracket.
But does your IQ affect the way you see the?
I don't know. I have no idea. The way I look at the world, here's my position. Look, I want to know true things, and I think that there is a correspondence to reality. However, I am not convinced that we can ever understand true reality. I don't think absolutism, such that we can say this is absolute reality. I don't know if it makes sense to do so. What I perceive to be reality is what my reality. And you could argue, idealism versus, realism all you want. Like I have an argument that I put forth on color of realism. I don't think colors exist. The color blue doesn't exist. It's a psychological phenomenon. Okay.
To a certain
it's an abstract
spectrum.
The color itself exists in the brain. Now you can quantify it by saying it's so many angstroms or so many nanometers. But
the color orange is so many gigahertz on the spectrum of visible light.
It's a wavelength. It's a wavelength.
Right, but that doesn't show you the color. That just describes the photonic energy that says in this region, if the photon has this energy level, we're going to call that blue. But the phenomenon, right? The phenomenon only exists in the brain.
Yeah.
It's perceptible through conscious aging.
Exactly. That's why it's called color of realism. Some people have a hard time conceiving of that, but that's an argument that I could put forth. Now, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer in some of this stuff. I think some people could be, just like some people could be a theological non-cognitivist. Somebody could be a realist. Somebody could be an idealist. Somebody could be this or that. You know what? There's no right answer, I think. I think it's whatever conforms to your worldview.
If we're going to get through all 10 of these, I got to speed it up. If we don't get through all 10, that's fine.
And I'd love to take some questions from the live audience. I'm down for that.
Really?
Oh yeah, they're going nuts, and I'm all for criticism. If you want to come at me, come at me. I'm cool with that.
Go ahead and field one right now if you want.
Ocean in mind?
Do you have the live chat up right now? We're not seeing it. We don't have it on our screen.
Well, bring it up.
Well, I can. Let me go ahead and look at one.
Yeah, go nuts.
Let's go ahead and ask the other question, and we can look through the live chat if we want.
Okay.
Somebody asked
What's
about
the question you got on the docket?
People think that matter made itself. It made itself programmable, and it programmed itself. They have a low IQ. Is that something we can answer?
That's jungle jargon.
That's jungle jargon talking.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know where to go with jungle jargon. I spent 4 hours at one time trying to explain special and general theory of relativity to jungle jargon. Let me tell you this. This is probably why I drink now.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's stick to my question for now. Next question for Ocean. Which religion is the greatest threat to global well-being, and why?
Ooh, good question.
It's probably Islam.
Yeah.
I would say the same, actually. Yeah, no, Islam by far.
I think that one of the reasons why I think Islam is because...
Hey, high five. Four-way high five. We all agree on something. Holy shit.
God, yes!
Okay.
I think that one of the reasons for it is just as a political ideology, it doesn't... it's got all the problems that Christianity has, except a little bit worse. I think that from a truth claim perspective, Islam has one of the strongest cases of a monotheistic religion. But I also think that it's got a lot of problems when it comes to in and out groups and how it's practiced.
Yeah, and I also think that the Islamic community actually is very active, and I think that if it gets a foothold, I think it could actually be a dominant force. I mean, I had a discussion with Aaron not too long ago, and he thinks the exact same way, and that Islam is a religion that could actually take over. And I have to explain this to theists all the time. Look, if you're against secular society, if you're against secularism, the odds of your particular brand of religion being the one that's dominant is pretty damn slim.
Right. I think that also there's ways of being a practicing Muslim and being, perfectly fine and not a threat to anything.
Somebody once told me that a Muslim extremist wants to cut your head off. A moderate Muslim will hold your feet while a Muslim extremist cuts your head off.
That's exactly right here.
I don't think that's
So
true.
there's a
I'm a
question
little
I
bit
like
more
to
of
ask.
I'm much more tolerant of Islam than maybe you are, but I think that it's perfectly fine to be Muslim, and I think that there's, as far as the argument between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam has got a really strong case for itself as far as being the correct Abrahamic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But I was assuming that Abrahamic tradition is true, which I don't think that it is. However, it does have a lot of dangerous side effects of like with what's in the Quran and the kind of things that Muhammad was saying about how to treat others that are outside of your religion. So
TJ,
the in-group out-group is strong with that one.
Yes.
TJ, next question. You're given two choices. You can be a mortal who's omniscient and knows there is no God, there's no afterlife, and you're permanently discouraged and depressed. Or you can be happy all the time and not know anything. What would you rather be?
Oh, ignorance is bliss, buddy.
So what is it better, to be right all the time or to be happy all the time?
Well, I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with being right, but what I want to know, what the true nature
No,
of reality.
we know there's no God in this hypothetical. And you know it in one scenario. In one scenario, you know it and you're depressed until you die. Or you don't know it and you're happy your entire life.
I don't know. I've gone through some pretty bleak periods of depression in my life, so I think I'd be all right with knowing things. And
yeah, I agree. I agree, buddy. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I'd just be unhappy the rest of my life.
I'm on the other side. I think that I'd rather not know and be happy because
you're the first one that has ever said that ever in the history of me asking this question.
I kind of like having the mystery, honestly.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad answer, but I would rather know.
In the Matrix, the one that eats the steak and wants to get reinserted into the Matrix.
Cypher, yeah.
You're Cypher.
Well, so see, the thing is with the Matrix thing, if I make the decision on that, if I have the decision of whether or not I'm going to receive like truth and not know whether or not I'm going to be depressed afterwards, I'm going to be interested in receiving truth.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about like my health and well-being of life, of not knowing something and being happy versus knowing something and being depressed, I'd rather be happy.
You make a good point. But
if we're in a situation in which we're in the Matrix and I'm choosing blue pill or red pill, I get to go outside and face something that's face reality and give myself a chance versus knowingly go back into ignorance, I'm going to be more interested in the red pill in that situation because it gives me more control.
Good point.
Hey, so Jim, can I answer a question that's in the live chat that somebody's asked like 10 times? Because obviously I think they really misunderstood me, and it's important.
Oh, go.
Okay, so no, I have never said that the A in Greek only means not. What I said was, and if you listen to every time I've ever said this, in relationship to the word atheism, theos, the A means not for the proposition of theism. It does not mean without. It doesn't mean without. So if you actually go, that's what I said.
Both ways. I understand that there is a Greek atheos.
Let me finish my sentence,
which
please.
means
Let me finish my sentence, please. The Stanford Encyclopedia points this out very specifically, that the A in atheos should not be interpreted as without. It should be interpreted as not. That's what Stanford Encyclopedia says. You can argue with that. You can argue with the writers, and I've seen somebody actually do it and wrote to them, and they wrote back a long thing about why they wrote what they did, someone in some forum. But you cannot say that I'm wrong for stating that, because that is the fact that is in Stanford Encyclopedia. That they say specifically.
I'll argue as well that there's not going to be, when you're talking about atheism, there's not really an objective definition when it comes to this. And the etymology of a word, like studying the parts, does not necessarily mean that it's going to be exactly what the sum of those parts equals. A good example is there's an argument with the Bible. Hold on, one example I want to give. There's an argument in the Bible about the translation of a word that Paul seems to have made up called arsenokoitai, which means man bed. Now there's controversy as to whether or not this means general sexual deviancy or if this means homosexuality directly, and people appeal to the etymology of it as being a reason why it must mean homosexuality. But there's huge disagreement as far as how the word is used in context and other circulating sources, that it seems to also mean bestiality and a ton of other things. So it's probably a general term for sexual deviancy.
Well, let me sure.
Now that means then that the sum of the parts of the etymology does not actually mean the definition.
Okay, but let me ask you.
The text in the Bible is actually talking about general sexual deviancy and is not even talking about homosexuality at all, but in fact talking about pederasty and bestiality. Okay, but let me ask you something. If I say, look, I'm using a very respectable source, Stanford Encyclopedia, I think most people would agree is a very respectable. Okay. Is a very respectable philosophical source. And somebody says, well, I just don't care what Stanford says. Okay. Right, fine.
Over. I mean,
You
at
wanna
that
use the
point,
word
what am I
differently
supposed to
than
say to you?
fine, but we're talking about appeal to authority when it comes to the Stanford Encyclopedia.
Right, and I accept
Authority to
I accept Stanford Encyclopedia as authoritative source. I use it. I know more. I think every philosopher I know uses it. Every person I know likes philosophy uses Stanford. That's like this seems to be the standard. If somebody doesn't accept it, they don't have to. But that doesn't take away from the argument of what it says. They can say, I don't like it. I don't accept Stanford. They're wrong. Okay, great. But it doesn't change the fact that that's the position I take. That it is a valid source, and that
I'm not necessarily arguing with you. I'm just saying.
No, I'm not either. I'm
etymology
asking your opinion.
It's not like the formula for figuring out what a word means.
No,
Because
I
there's
agree with
several
you.
exceptions, and I just brought up
I'm not-
one ancient example.
Ocean, I'm not disagreeing with you. Somebody in the live chat said, "Well, I don't care what Stanford Encyclopedia says." Okay, fine. Conversation's over.
All right, great.
Listen,
Yeah, I mean, where do you go with that? It's like saying, "Well, I don't care what your formal source says." Oh,
I don't
that's
care what
good.
science says. I don't
Yeah,
care what
I don't care
believe.
what I don't care what this research paper
I reject your authority. The world is flat.
Flat tards, yes. Yeah.
Steve, according to your definition just now, you said atheist.
It's not my
means
definition.
not atheist, right?
I hate when people say your definition because I don't know what you mean. Like if it's a stipulative definition,
Steve is
I come up
appealing
with.
to the Stanford Encyclopedia of
Yeah,
philosophy.
I go to Stanford. That's what I defer to. Yes.
But if you're saying atheist means not theist, correct? Not.
No,
it means negation.
Negation
It's
of the proposition.
atheos. A in the Greek for the atheos is a negation.
Of the proposition. Yeah.
So against theism.
No, against the proposition. The proposition of theism is P equals something. You're saying that that's
In a
false.
simple rejection, it's
Right. Thank you. Exactly. So
it
the
becomes
not
rejection.
Hey, you know
Yeah,
what?
rejection.
I'm not.
P or not P, right? There you go. Yay.
You know what? I concede defeat in this conversation. Anytime we talk to each other, I will just only call myself an agnostic. I'm not used to I am my ass kicked in debate after
Mazel
Robert.
tov. I don't.
No, man.
Yeah.
I will concede to your definition from here on out every time we talk
Stanford,
about
no, stop saying my definition because that makes it sound like a stipulative one I came up with.
Well, the
See,
definition
I'll defer to like something like Stanford Encyclopedia.
The
That's
definition that Steve holds to in order to have conversations with people.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
And I'm down with it. Okay. TJ's only got 5 more minutes, so I'm going to get to one more question.
We're not here for TJ. We're here for us.
I know.
Just kidding.
I'm sitting around.
After I
TJ's
leave.
got 5 more minutes.
I'm out of brand. I mean, I got more brandy, but I got nothing left in the cup. Can I go get something?
Listen,
Or
yeah, go ahead. I'll start with Ocean, and I'll
start with
go to-
Ocean. I'll be back in a second. I'm
All right.
having fun. You guys are great. I love you
Oh,
guys.
no.
We got to get you like 10,000
You're,
subs.
you're
seriously.
tossing me to them, Steve. What's going
I
on?
only have
You're
13
on your own,
viewers
brother.
right now, so anything you guys can do to make that shit happen,
Oh, what happened to Steve?
You're what?
camera.
Oh, he turned off his camera. Okay.
Anything you guys can do to get my viewership up. I only have 13 viewers right now, and I'm sure on your
Himbo
side you got thousands.
Oh shit, fool.
Anyway, all right, we'll start with Ocean. What do you have any pet conspiracy theories that you're almost ashamed to admit?
It's really difficult for me to convince me of conspiracy theories.
Is there anything that most people don't believe that you think is probably true for whatever reasons? It might be personal or just emotional, that people would kind of laugh at you if you believed in.
And the closest thing to that is that I'm a polytheist.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that. I knew that about him.
You're Hindu, right?
No, I'm Norse.
Norse.
'Cause last time I talked to him, he had the little.
Yeah, you're right, man.
He had the little symbol up. We didn't see his face.
Got it. Or I don't know if that. Yeah, that's my Thor's hammer there, and then the raven above
We
that.
have a cult of we have a clan of the Wotan here in my small city. They do trash pickup on the highway.
Clan of Wotan sounds like a racist organization if they're spelling it that way. WOTAN.
Yes.
Yeah, that
But
means
they're-
will of the
No,
Aryan
they're
race.
Wiccans. They're Norse.
Right. They might be okay. When Norse adherents are using the spelling Wotan, WOTAN, that is an acronym for will of the Aryan race. You're looking at a racist organization.
Do not tell me that.
Wow.
That's
I'm
what they
glad you
are.
said that, so I don't like team up with them on anything.
Yeah,
That's
that might be bad.
fucking crazy.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
something
that
you
might
should
be
know.
bad. Good to know.
Okay, Steve, do you have
Yes.
any pet conspiracy theories that you would slightly be ashamed of other people knowing about?
I don't know if I have pet. I find ones that I find funny. Like I gotta admit, the whole Michelle Obama being a man, that was funny. That was funny. God, that was well done.
The part of that
Well
question that I
played,
took issue
people.
with was whether or not I was ashamed of people believing it, because I'm fairly upfront with pretty much everything I believe.
Is there anything
So-
you're kind of like you'd rather not people know that now everyone's going to know?
Conspiratorial wise,
Yeah, it's
Me,
like I don't have anything like
personally, I lean away from chiropractic medicine. I lean away from meditation.
I like
I'm
meditation.
sorry, I lean towards meditation and away from hypnosis.
you know, I agree. I like meditation.
Meditation, if people are like against it, I think there are some merits to it.
Yeah, no, I
And
agree with
that's
that. I agree with that.
Weird.
But see, like the chiropractic, there's two types of chiropractors. There's the ones that actually put faith
I
in
got
this.
one. It might apply for this.
Okay, you can wait. I can wait.
Sorry, man.
I bet she's gonna take it too, because I was gonna say something. Is it sports related?
No,
Who, me?
no.
Or him?
Oh, Steve is sports related.
Oh, I was going to say that the one type of doctor that says, you know, subluxations, you know,
Yeah, subluxation.
I don't buy any of that bullshit. However, I have been to chiropractors for pain, and I will tell you, they do help for that. And there's some types of neuropathy that I would say a chiropractor is legit on. But if a chiropractor is telling you that they're going to have to adjust your chi and fix your subluxations, get the fuck out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like I'm gonna massage your foot and it's gonna like cure your
reflex. Yeah. But if they say, look, we're going to put some needles in your leg because I have had some neuropathy problems. We're gonna like put electrical current here and there, and we're gonna line you. Yeah, you know what? I got to tell you, it's not. I don't think it's placebo. I think it actually did help. So
I think that the thing that I was going to put out there is that
Here, my thing before I gotta go. Sorry, it was really great talking to you guys, and this I think was really helpful.
Thank you, buddy.
In a lot of ways. And
Mahala.
Mahala, yep. And so my weird thing. Okay, so if I had to say some weird like thing that probably people would laugh at me about, but I don't know, more people probably do it than you think. Like I have this like weird superstition about the Cowboys. So if I can't like I always have to wear a jersey on game day, and I can't wash that particular jersey all season, because if I do, there could be a chance that we might not go to the Super Bowl.
Well, let me argue. Well, hang on. Let me argue in favor of something like that from the player's point of view. Like players don't wash their socks on a winning streak.
Yeah.
There might be an argument to be made there only for the fact that it produces a certain brain state that puts them in more focus for the game because they hold an irrational belief. That's called a prudential. That's called prudentialism. A prudential. What you're saying is, I want this to occur. I want to win. So therefore, it is prudential to have this superstition that I wear the same stocks.
So you're kind of like psyching yourself out.
Yeah. So it's the same. It's the same thing by somebody who's like dying and it says, oh, you know what? Here's this experimental drug, and there's not much evidence it's going to help. But you know what? It's prudential for me to want to survive, to take care of my family. I'm going to hold, to the position that this drug is going to help me. Now, are they justified in that belief? Not evidentially, because the evidence is not there for them. That's one of the reasons why I'm a non-evidentialist.
Oddly enough, Jordan Peterson describes truth in a very similar line into prudentialism. That if it's something is prudential, then it's true.
And that's fine. You can do that. That's one way to define prudential, or define what is true. I mean, believe me, if you get into all this what is true shit, it's pretty. That rabbit hole is deep.
Yeah.
Okay, TJ's got to go. It's just now it's 2-on-1, Steve.
Yeah, you got the numbers now.
Wait, first of all, how'd you run off Courtney?
She passed out on the couch.
She's on the couch, man.
After 2 martinis?
No, she had more than that, dude.
No, not even, well, this is the third, and she didn't.
Roche and I were just too boring for her. I get that.
She's tapped out.
All right, cool.
It's all right.
She's hungry.
So.
Yeah, I got some wine now.
Good talking to you, Ocean.
Love you, man.
TJ, you're awesome, dude.
Thanks, man.
Piece of shit. Okay, next question.
Good talking with you, TJ.
Start with Steve.
Sure.
What traditions or parts of our culture right now in 500 years will be seen as barbaric?
Oh, I think a lot of things to do with our prison system. What'd you say, Ocean?
Surgery.
Well, with a
barbaric
knife,
doctors can't fix people without cutting holes in them.
Yeah, with a scalpel, it'll all be done, through like laparoscopic. No, I think our prison systems. I think our prison system is completely flawed. I think we have, we need to get more into the type of not the restorative justice we need to get to. We need to say, look at why the hell should somebody go to prison because they have a joint on them, kind of shit. Or why should somebody, because of the color of skin, get 2 times the amount of time in prison than somebody who doesn't have that color skin.
Wait,
I mean,
do you
there's
have some
fundamental problems.
stats to back that
Yeah, I
up?
think in 500 years it'll expand, but I have a very dystopian view of the future.
Oh, you don't think on the average that black people get more prison sentence time than white people?
No. What I'm saying
Not
is
you,
that,
no, Jim.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, I will definitely bring you information on that. I absolutely believe that. Yes.
I'm really ignorant on the subject, but I know that crack cocaine and powder cocaine are different, and one's more easily accessible, one's cheaper.
Crack is, yeah.
Right? Is that something to it?
Yeah, crack is a form of cocaine.
Crack's got a higher sentence to it,
cocaine.
and
So you're
crack is
saying
also more highly
dark-skinned
used
people
by
get
minorities.
proportionally higher prison sentences than light-skinned people?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and why
For the
is
same
that?
crimes even.
Is that because of individual judges or juries' a subjective decision to impose those decisions?
Yeah, I think there's still a form of institutional racism in the system. I still think that there is a bias.
Is it institutional or is it individual?
Well, it's institutional. It's inside the system. It's permeating in the system.
I think that what Atheist Edge is asking is not whether or not it's institutional, but whether or not it's like doctrinal. Like, is it written down?
No, it's not doctrinal. No.
Is it codified in some book where
No, it's not codified.
people are going to get
It's not. Nobody's arguing that it's a codified thing.
No, not at all. No.
Is this the
Actually, I'm not aware of anybody that holds the position of like white privilege or patriarchy or any of this other shit.
Yeah, there's nothing
That are saying
codified.
that it's codified. No one's saying it's
Nothing's
codified.
codified?
No.
So you're not saying it's institutional or systemic. You're saying it's individual.
No, we're saying it's institutional and systemic, but it's not
Yeah,
codified.
that's both. It's both institutional
Wait.
and a systemic problem because it is the individual
If it's
judges.
systemic, it means it's codified, right?
Well, hang on. There's a problem not only with the
No,
judges,
that's
but
not
the
how it's
problem with the
being
defense. I mean, think about it. The people that cannot afford a good defense are not getting the proper defense they need for their cases. This is something we've known for a very long time.
Yes, I agree with that.
So,
yeah, so it's an economic problem.
That would be something that's systemic.
social economics would be a systemic problem.
It's totally
It's a social economical problem.
We're not talking. It's not in any way, shape, or form based on melanin content of skin cells, right?
Well,
Okay, so the example that Steve is putting forward is one that is based on poverty line. But if you can expand that and note that there's some similar problems when you look at it from a racial line.
Yeah.
And then it would therefore be racial systemic problems.
Are you saying that it's individual racist people that are imposing this, or is it something deeper and socioeconomic? Is it?
I mean, any society is going to be made up of individuals, right?
Yeah, and I would actually argue that it's woven in, hardwired into our system.
I think there's a critical misunderstanding that's happening, and I'm trying to clear it up.
Sure.
When you're saying that, it's based on individuals, of course, each decision that is being brought up is an individual decision that's being made either by a judge or it's a group of decisions being made by a jury. But as the system is built, the system punishes people of color more so than it punishes whites.
That's generally understood
in more extreme ways for the same crimes, and therefore it can be seen as, when you look at the trend, you can describe it as systemic.
Yes.
Okay, let's say guy A is dark-skinned. He gets thrown in jail for 1 gram of crack cocaine. Guy B is light-skinned. He gets thrown in jail for 1 gram of powder cocaine. You're saying on average, guy A is going to get a stiffer sentence if convicted.
Yes, but there's also different stipulations legally when it comes to crack versus powder cocaine.
But for the same exact crime.
Let's say that we had 2 people in that were up for murder or rape. The person of color is going to get a higher sentence than the white person generally.
Why is that?
That's why I don't know why it is.
But why would you guess? It's gun to your head. Why would you guess?
That's a race-based systemic problem.
Is it the jury? Is it the judge? Is it the system itself? Is it?
I don't know enough about it to make any claims beyond that. I just seen that you look at the statistics and you see that for the same crime,
Well, I mean,
specifically black people get higher.
Yes.
All right.
And bringing the reasoning down for that, Jim, is a very difficult thing, because it's not just the judges, it's not just the defense attorney, it's not just the poverty level, it's not just the skin color. All we can say with certainty is that crime for crime, a person with darker skin is more likely to get a longer, stiffer sentence than that with a white person. I don't think anybody argues against that.
Well, okay. For the sake of argument, I know that 6% of the population are dark-skinned males, and they account for 35 to 40% of the violent crimes in America. That's not racist to even say. Now, we can look at the causes of that. Is it socioeconomic? Is it cultural? It definitely isn't based on just the melanin content of their skin, that they're so genetically different that they're going to be more apt to crime. We can already rule that one out. All right. So is there anything? So the facts that you're putting out, what is the cause of that, and what can we do to change it? What can we do to change it?
Well, there's a really good article in The Atlantic about this that I can link you to. That goes into kind of the history of the reason why black communities have been put where they are, and that like how ghettoization started forming, and then beyond that, how the reason why specifically black males are more likely to run into cops.
Is that dealing with the projects and things of that nature?
Right, because those areas are patrolled more often by cops. It seems to be the case.
Why are they patrolled more often?
Well, could there have not been a stigma that's saying, "Oh, there's more black people here"? Therefore,
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Why we start talking about how it's systemic.
Right, but think about it, Jim. Think about
the cause and effect here.
Jim, hang on. But think about this, like you said, the self-fulfillment. If there's this narrative that black people commit more crime, and you have projects where predominantly more black people live, and there's a higher police presence there, and obviously things will escalate. There's a lot of factors that go on to this, and I think there is a self-fulfilling prophecy to be made there. But it all boils down. I think when you get to the root of it, I think that all the problems do finally go to in some kind of in systemic racism that exists. I think the say that our country doesn't have systemic racism, I think that it's so fundamentally flawed. We do have systemic racism. It does exist.
So cops patrol in black areas because they're racist, or because those are poor areas, and poor areas are predominantly more high.
We have white poor areas that don't have the same amount of coverage.
Saying that cops are racist is kind of a strong
That's a really good point.
Yeah, and it's not the individual cops that are racist.
It's that the system has been built in such a way that it's racist.
That's why I said it's hardwired into the system.
Right. Okay, what could be done to circumvent this then, to change it?
I think that one of the big solutions that has been put forward that I agree with is body cams on cops.
Ooh,
I think like
good.
My position is that if a cop does not put in a body cam record of the arrest, then the person should be set free.
Yeah, no, I'm all for body cams.
That is the most poignant, coherent thing I've heard about this subject in probably 6 months.
Yeah, no, I'm all for that.
That's awesome.
I have been for a long time.
That's a position that I hold, and I've been told that it's very fringe. But I think that that body cams on cops is a thing. But I think that if there is no footage of the arrest, or if it was accidentally lost, or any of that bullshit, then the arrest should be considered null.
The problem is that you cannot have an isolated piece of evidence be the focal point of the whole case, because then there are times when people might be let free just because they have overwhelming evidence from somewhere else. I mean, let's say they got a security cam. Oh, well, he didn't have a body cam, but we have security cam. So you're saying that you have to like record this just on the body cam or anywhere?
You might be able to come up with an exception and say, well, look, we have a security cam of the arrest, but security cameras also don't catch sound. So
if a crime's not recorded.
No, it's not if the crime isn't recorded, it's the arrest isn't recorded.
Oh, the arrest. Okay.
Yeah, the arrest.
I don't think I have a big issue with that. I think we'd have to consider that.
I'm cool with that. That's really like a great idea, because there should be. I mean, this day and age technology, you should be able to keep your body cam, your GoPro up and running all your entire shift.
Yeah, why is it any different than being Mirandized? I mean, we accept that if you're not Mirandized, then it's thrown out. Well, how is that any different?
Yeah.
If we say, look, we're going to add that into that.
Bullshit.
Okay, yeah, you're done.
You know?
You know what? I would be for that, I think. Yeah.
We just changed the world, guys. Congratulations, we just changed
Atheist
the world.
Edge.
This is
changing
something
the
that I've been
world.
harping about for
Ed,
some
we
time.
just changed the world.
Really badly.
Okay, ready
actually.
for the next question?
Cool.
And I'm
Oh
going
my
to go
God,
pee
we got
while
more?
you're.
That was
I'm
pretty
going to start
in-depth.
with Steve.
Oh, did he freeze? Ocean?
Yeah, he's frozen for me.
All right, so we're going to
Believer's
start
argument. Mine is the fine-tuning argument.
Can you ask your
And
question again?
I really, the only counter to that I have is the.
You froze.
Are
You
still
froze,
there?
so we don't
Or
know
did
what you're talking
freeze?
about. Can you repeat the question? We have no idea what you're talking about right now.
Did we freeze?
Yeah.
Are we frozen?
No, you're
No.
good. Now you're good. So repeat.
I just want you to repeat the question because we don't know what you're talking
We're
about.
back. Are we back?
Yes.
Are we frozen?
We're
Hi.
still back.
Still back.
Okay. You guys are still, your audio is still jacked up.
It's on your end.
We're having
Are we,
problems. on his
okay.
end then.
Are we good now?
We should
Ocean
be.
and I are fine. I hear Ocean
Yeah.
perfectly.
Shit. Okay, sorry guys. I've got 3 people in my house using the same phone line. All right. All right. So I'll start with Steve. I'm going to go to the restroom real quick. If you didn't hear me before, but which argument from the believer side is the most compelling to you and why? Mine is the fine-tuning argument. The only counter I have to
The only counter is bye-bye. Now he has the back.
What's the argument that he said he found convincing?
He likes the fine-tuning argument, which I have to think is one of the worst arguments myself.
I hate that argument.
It's bad. It's a bad argument.
I think
Because-
the Kalam is one of the better ones.
See, I'm not. You know what? I have to disagree with Al. I would say that either Anselm's ontological argument or any kind of modal ontological argument is pretty strong.
Ontological arguments I tend to just hate.
Well, because they're yeah. Well, but I mean, he asked for what's strong. I mean, if you want to approach something from a modal ontological realism point of view, that's a hell of an argument to get into. Or even, like I said, Anselm's ontological. I don't think it's a bad argument.
You have to
per
run
se.
through that with me later because I'm not.
Which one? There's two.
familiar
The
with the-
ontological and the modal ontological. They're two different things.
I know the ontological argument, but that just seems to reduce to me that I can imagine it, therefore it must be true.
Well, yeah,
It's
that's
like,
basically
if I can imagine the perfect island.
It's
or
basically
the
saying if
perfect
I can
woman,
imagine the
something like
perfect thing, then the perfect thing must exist, and that's how the ontological argument is. Because I can imagine nothing greater.
I don't think that's a good argument.
And the way Anselm worded it, I don't think it was that great. But there's
I mean,
been
if you
iterations.
if you apply to anything that's not God, it's not going to work.
No, you could actually. You could say this. Well, how about if you have Platonic forms? You know, in some Platonic
forms. Okay, so if you want to argue as God as a Platonic form, and then he's not actually making any influence on anything, it doesn't exist as far as being able to affect this universe, then fine. You're talking about a concept that's perfect. You're not talking about an actual God that exists.
Okay, maybe you might be right. You might be guilty of hyperstantiation of that, some kind of concretism. But I think it's a good argument only for the fact that it's a very difficult argument to really get into. And the modal ontological argument saying that if God exists in some possible world, then he must exist in all possible worlds, right? And I
think that's also dumb.
No, that was not bad because look now you have to provide counterfactuals, right? Because now you have to say, look, is it possible that God exists? Okay, well, in some possible world, in some modal ontological reality, that he exists, in which case he exists in all of them. Now, there are defeaters to that. I'm not a modal realist. I'm a modal anti-realist, but it's not an easy argument.
The modal part of it is what doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, modal just means modification.
Are we on my question?
Possible means
we're on the question about what arguments we find strong. I'm saying Kalam.
Okay.
And
why is
Stephen
Kalam
saying
strong?
Ontological.
Why is Kalam?
I think it's pretty straightforward when it comes to just like, well, the universe was caused by something.
Yeah, well, okay. Everything that begins to exist has a cause.
God. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go through the quick version of the Kalam. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. The problem I'm running into with that is that the equivocation of the word cause. If you look at which 4 versions of the Aristotelian causes do you want to go with? Do you want to say that has a material cause? Okay, then yeah, let's say the universe is caused by quantum fluctuations.
By some sort of other material, right?
Okay, so there's a causal chain. Now, I don't subscribe to the principle.
But then we get in that sense, if you're going to be trying to appeal to a material cause, then often the material cause is going to be something that began to exist at some point.
Okay, but they're not using.
So we're talking about something that didn't begin to exist.
They're using an efficient cause. They want to posit a prime mover. They want to posit a God as the cause.
Well,
and there's a difference between causes on that.
Bill Craig always ends that cosmological with, and we call that cause God.
Yes.
Right. Well, that would be the efficient cause, right? That's the person that made all that happen. But if you just say with the Kalam just saying that it has a cause. Okay, what do you mean by cause? There's different meanings of the word cause.
You're confusing me on that because I'm not familiar with the different meanings in cause. I'm only familiar with
final,
cause.
efficient.
I mean, it's hard for me to define cause without using the word cause. Then, but
okay,
what I'm looking at is something that brought about the beginning of the universe. So, that's what I'm looking at. Are you looking at is there a definition of cause that puts that idea into jeopardy?
No, let me kind of run through this real quick. Okay, so there's 4 Aristotelian type causes, and let me bring them up real quick because I'm too lazy to
actually. I have to go in a second, or I'll be back. But my food just came in; it's coming up the stairs.
Okay, 1 second here. All right, so let me put in the relationship to like building a house. Okay, when does a house begin to exist? If I say that it begins to exist when I get all the materials together, like all the wood, that's a material cause. Okay, so as soon as I get all the materials together, the house begins to exist. Or I can say there's a formal cause. A formal cause would be something along the lines of when the contractor gets together or the blueprints get drawn up, when the contractor or draftsman makes the house. That's
is there any cause that isn't human?
Well, hang on. Another word version would be the agent. Okay, also known as the efficient cause. Okay. That cause would be the prime mover, the person building if once I hit that nail on the head, I'm building the house. The house begins to exist. Okay. Or I can say the final cause. And the final cause is when the building's all done. The house begins to exist when it's completed.
It wouldn't be, there's no cause definition that is when the trees are growing.
Exactly. So when you talk about the Kalam, which version of cause you want to talk about?
Are any of them not human causes? Like that you can't ascribe to a human being in that example, as far as like the creation of a house? Because the idea is that the human is God in that example.
Start at 4.55 billion years ago. We're in a closed system where the sun is, if we start there with abiogenesis, we're talking Big Bang. We're not talking abiogenesis.
Well, hang on. First of all, I accept the Kalam as a logical structured argument. I think it's valid logically. You agree with that, Ocean, right? It's logically valid. It's a simple P there for Q, P there, or P implies Q, P there for Q, right? Very simple. So the question then goes, is it sound? Should we attack the premises? Now, most people generally would attack, I think, premise 1, everything that begins to exist as a cause. Well, first of all, in quantum mechanics, that doesn't hold true. There are things that have a cause that doesn't have a reason for it. It doesn't have a beginning for it. For example, if I talk about spontaneous fission or weak nuclear decays on what's called a non-hidden variable model, there's no information in that system prior to the event. The event literally occurs without any cause. So the beginning, when is the beginning of that event? When does a decay particle begin to decay? It's a nonsensical question in some ways. It decays, and there's no information in that system prior to that event. So it literally is a cause without an effect. I think the principle of sufficient reason is wrong. I don't hold to it. But
good. Ocean, you got to retort, so I'm going to move on.
I think he agrees with me on this, actually. Don't you?
Sorry, I just got back. What did
just nod your head?
Listen.
No. I'm not gonna do that, Steve.
Okay.
Sorry.
Next question. We'll go to Ocean first. This one's kind of there's a few moving parts to it. Okay, you got 3 people. Person A has a worldview and he's never deviated from it. Person B had a worldview and he was apostate once, and he has a new worldview now. Person C has deviated twice, and he has a third worldview now through the course of his life. Mm-hmm. Of the 3, would you be able to put a number on it as to which one is most credible in your mind?
C would be the most credible. Look, if you can't change your worldview is your theory of the world, and your worldview will change as you live. What's that? You don't agree?
He was asking me, you asshole.
He wasn't.
Yes.
You were asking Ocean?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, well, my bad. I'm sorry.
He was just a narcissist. It's okay. So
we all are. Most non-believers are by nature, and correct me, you can disagree with me. I think we're higher intelligence than the population. We are narcissistic. We are very
Ocean
prone.
is I'm not.
We're very prone to. We're very prone to obsessive compulsive behavior.
I have a strong amount of pride.
Eccentric.
Yeah, but there's a difference between. Look, there's a difference between confident.
I'm not a believer, so. But okay, so let me get back to the question. I would just say that I'm less likely to trust A. B and C, I don't see much of a difference between.
Really?
Yeah, I mean that's fair enough. That's fair enough. There's not much of a difference. Really? You have to be able to change your worldview, or something's not right, because your worldview will change as you go through your life.
I personally say B has got the most credibility because C looks like a flip flopper.
I don't think so.
He's easily apt to just the social pressure or social influence,
or they're just honest with themselves.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and your worldview is a huge thing.
In general, B, the person that flipped once and stuck to it, that's why me being a cradle atheist, which is a minority among atheists, I was born an atheist. I've never believed. I think I have less credibility than someone who was born a Christian who deconverted.
But now you're using specific things. See, I don't know whether or not I'd be C or if I would be some sort of order of magnitude beyond C. Because like I was a Christian, I went through several different kinds of Christianity, and then I left Christianity. So then I was already person B by the time I was out of Christianity, honestly. So beyond that, I was already person C, honestly, by the time I left Christianity. And then I've gone through 2 different forms of paganism, really.
Yeah, and look I was a non-believer. Yeah, I was a non-believer. Then I don't think that I'm a non-believer again. That's 3 things right there.
Well, I don't think that any of my transitions have been because of social pressures. In fact, I've often resisted social pressures when it comes to my beliefs. So I think that my coming to my position has been like I've been in the position that I've been now for almost a decade. But it took a few trying things out in order to get here. And he's gone. So I just realized he's not listening to me.
Whatever.
Sorry.
No, that's cool, man. Don't worry about it.
Okay, listen.
All right. Well, I'll pick up somewhere. I was saying by the time I left Christianity, I was already person C because I'd gone through different forms of Christianity. I'd become a Baptist and a Methodist and an Episcopalian, and finally I left Christianity, and then a Celtic Christian, and then I left Christianity, and then I became a pantheist, and after that I became a polytheist, and now I've been a polytheist for about 10 years. So for me,
that's a whole other episode, Ocean. I would love to dig into your brain with that shit.
Right. Have fun, but
have fun with that.
I mean, it would be a good show, I think, but because there's been a couple of people that have asked kind of questions on that. I've rarely gone into like the whole fucking journey, but if you wanted to like talk to me about that, I'm cool with it.
Oh yeah.
But I think that I have a understanding of what person C might have gone through if they're not just a total fucking flip-flopper. I don't think that it's mutually exclusive that someone has converted worldviews a couple of times and is also therefore influenced by social pressures. And I think I was saying earlier while you were gone that I don't view myself as somebody who's really influenced by social pressures. In fact, I've often rejected social pressures and been like, well, there's a large amount of groupthink here, and I don't see a reason for it beyond groupthink. So I'm not going to be involved in it because of groupthink. I want to be involved in it because I find it convincing.
Yeah,
and
I'm in that boat.
Like I tried out a church called The Torch for about a year, and it was a one of those windowless churches where they have like a contemporary band and all that stuff, and they're really cool. And I was into it for a second, but once I started examining their like what was going on, it was very like group elation kind of shit. And as well, why am I here beyond just there being a group? And once I started examining the specific beliefs of the church, I wound up leaving that church and going to a different one because it seemed to be just a hype group about Christianity. And after that, I became Episcopalian. And that's just an example of one transition. So there were several transitions in my life, and I think that those transitions have been because I'm honest with myself about why I believe certain things. I try to self-examine as much as possible, and that results in sometimes changing my position.
Steve, did you answer that already or no?
No, I think he makes a good point, but I mean, I think that we all go through major transformations all the time, and I don't think that changing your worldview is that detrimental to your credibility, because a worldview is a huge amount of things. It's not one specific thing. Now, you can narrow down and say, well, generally speaking, my worldview is this. Like naturalism could be a worldview, but if people start off as a non-theist, which I think probably most people would say that's not really that. Argumentative to say that. I mean, one could argue we start off as atheists. I don't, but we definitely start off as non-theist. We don't have a God belief at the time, and then people can become theist, which I did, and now I'm a non-theist. So I've changed my position already 3 times. So that is not a worldview, because atheism, non-theism, I don't take as worldviews. But yeah, I think that as people grow, it's fine to change your worldview position, because that means that you are adapting to what you perceive to be the world, and that's your theory of the world. And I'm okay with that. I really am. I rather discuss why you hold a particular position, why you have the worldview you do, and see if it's sensical to me. That's how I, come to a conversation, right? And I will want to say this, I think it's fine to have confidence. I mean, we all have some kind of confidence. We're out on the internet. We're out on these podcasts. We're out on these YouTube channels, and that's fine. We all have confidence, but that is a hell of a lot different than narcissism. I am the antithesis of narcissism. If you look at anything about narcissism, I don't have any of those qualities. And people who have known me for 40 years can tell you that's the case. I am actually very reserved. You know when
I'm calling you a narcissist, Steve. It's tongue in cheek.
Oh, yeah, I know you, but I mean, talking about Jim. Yeah, I mean, Ocean has much more narcissistic things than most people. But I find those words being thrown around loosely when they shouldn't be, because they are something that means something. They are a disorder, in my opinion. I am very socially reserved. I don't go out. I don't have much, in real life things with people. And I like it that way. I like being reserved. That's not a quality as somebody who's narcissistic.
Introversion is a common quality of non-believers also.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I'm a non-believer, but I can't. There's no way anybody in their rational mind could say that I'm narcissistic just because I'm confident.
Well, you have a super intelligent IQ, and you are aware of it. It's hard to not be narcissistic sometimes.
I don't think that's a narcissist. I don't think that's the term used appropriately, though. It's confident that what you're saying, and we all could be wrong, and we're all corrected. The difference is, I know, Ocean knows, and as you know, if somebody gives us a reasonable argument why we're wrong, we will correct what we said. We will say, hey, you know what? I fucked up. I was wrong.
Oh, that's a great segue. Here we go. I'm going to start with you, Steve. What have you done a complete 180 on in the last 1 year, and who is the biggest influence that made you change your mind?
I hate this story. All right, fair enough. Okay. I fucked up when it came to a very simple question about why, if you take a lighter to a snowball, is no water produced. I thought it was due to what's called sublimation, and I got a little bit of background, somewhat, of thermodynamics. I had to take, obviously, courses in thermodynamics and shit like that in nuke school, plus in college, I took physics. So I was under the impression that was sublimation. What that basically means is going from a liquid state or solid state to a gaseous state without the intermediate liquid state. It's called sublimation. Well, Hogtie Champ, who's a very, very smart person that we know, if you know who he is, did the charts, and he actually looked at the pressure, temperatures, and all this other stuff, and he made a very convincing argument that it was not sublimation based upon the temperatures that was at, the pressures, and that it was just that the water was being absorbed by the snowball. That's why we didn't see water dropping. And he was right. No, he was right. I had to admit, it was not sublimation. I was technically very wrong on that. I felt like an idiot. Right, I felt like a total idiot, but after 3 days I'm not kidding. We had about 5 or 6 people with PhDs all looking into this.
Wow!
It was like, okay, let's figure this out. But when the information came out and we all looked at the evidence, we all came to the same conclusion, right? And even people that agreed with me initially, I said, well, let's figure this out. We were wrong. Shit happens. But that's the difference. If presented scientific evidence for something, a position of us being wrong that we cannot refute, the evidence is clear based upon the inability to go from that.
A very intellectually honest of you to admit it, and very.
But I felt like a moron.
I had one of these happen within the past week. where I've switched my position on something. So
Within last week?
Yeah, last week.
Wow. Okay.
So I've always held the position about, as far as like Abrahamic tradition, if you're going to have an Abrahamic tradition that can be considered correct, I figured that the most likely between them would be the ones that's closest to the claim, which would be, you would say Judaism is the one that's most likely, Christianity is second most likely, and then Islam and subsequent movements. I watched a debate between, let's see, David Wood and Shabir Ali, or Ali. And it's Shabirally, last nameAlly. And the debate was, is Jesus the Son of God? And after watching that, I kind of re-examined what I thought about Christianity versus Islam and Judaism, and came to the conclusion after that, it's like, wait, the arguments that are presented here by Shabir Ali were extremely good. And that if there's going to be if we're going to hold that the Abrahamic tradition is true, the most likely one for me would then be Islam. Those are the arguments that he presented. They were all very fantastic arguments. If we're accepting the premise that the Abrahamic tradition was true. And I sent a message to a Muslim friend of mine. And it's just like, wait, I just had this like weird moment where it's like, oh wait, I've completely changed my position on Islam in regards to that. It's not just a strange movement to me anymore. I totally understand how someone could see it as being the revelation of God if you're going to be believing in monotheism.
Aren't you the dumbass, Ocean?
I know, right?
I will go with mine. I've got two in the last year. The first one, TJ, just so happens to have been the catalyst for this one. But I am a pro-life atheist, which is extremely rare. I don't think it should be legislated, which puts me in the camp of the Democrats. But I think that it's a barbaric thing to do. And I thought that the central nervous system in the fetus was fully formed, and the blastula/fetus was capable of feeling pain at 6 weeks based on my interpretation. And TJ cited some really good scholarly sources and pushed that 6 weeks frame to 23 weeks. So now I'm at a second trimester abortion being okay.
Yeah, I thought, I was always under the pressure it's within like the beginning of the second trimester. Now, here's my position for on the record, if anybody cares. I'm not a fan of abortion. Just make that very clear. However, I do think that it should be legal. I do think it should be the woman's right. However, I see very few reasons to have a late-term abortion, except for the life of the mother or some extenuating circumstances. If at that time a woman has been pregnant for 8 months and she just changes her mind, I'm not a big fan. I don't think that makes sense to me, right? So I am against late-term abortions, except for those situations. So if you want to have the morning after pill or during the first trimester, I couldn't care less. I mean, I don't think that a bunch of cells is something to be concerned about. Amen. I agree with you. As soon as they start feeling pain, then I have a whole different.
That's the same reason that I'm a vegetarian. I don't want anything to feel pain.
Well, that's an ethical consideration. There are ethical, vegetarians, and I think that's just fine. But when I tell people that, they're like, "Oh, well, you're putting limitations on abortions." Well, I think there's sensible limitations, because let's be realistic here. And I want people to actually follow this. The abortion issue is so polarizing that neither side is going to get what they want unless they start with compromising first. Right? I mean, you're not going to have abortionists on demand such that, there's going to be some limitations, and there's going to be people out there saying, we don't want it. We want more limitations. We want no abortions. They're not going to get what they want. I can tell you right now, they've lost. The people that say abortions can never happen, get rid of them, they've already lost. Game over. Good game. Mm-hmm. If they don't start migrating to the middle and making some moderation and moderated type concessions or moderate type concessions, they're never going to get anywhere. And so I think that both the pro-life, which by the way does not
Pro-choice.
Yeah, pro-choice. I don't think pro-choice means that you're anti-life. The pro-choice doesn't mean that you are for abortions. It just means that you're for the option to have abortion.
It means you're for the destruction of children.
Kill the babies, eat their cheeks. So I'm okay. I mean, I'm with you on this. I am not a fan of abortion. I have gone on record of saying that. I think that there should be some legislation on it, but I think that early on, yes, that is the woman's right. Does that make sense?
If my view is correct, based on what TJ has shown me, and I've actually reviewed it, 23 weeks is a long time. I mean,
it's second semester yet.
Yeah, if 23 weeks got legislated, that would push everyone farther to the right. And I don't consider myself right or right wing or alt-right or Republican, but if I got my way, you wouldn't get abortions after 23 weeks. Which
all right, let's say 4 months. Okay, let's say obviously 4 months, right? So
40 weeks is conception is birth, right?
But let's just make a line of demarcation. Let's just say 4 months for whatever reason.
All right.
I think if people compromise,
reasonable. I'd say later than 23 weeks is reasonable, but I'm also like.
But listen, you generally want to err on the side of caution. We realize there's no fine line of demarcation on these things. So this is say for arguendo and to be safe. Let's just say, look, we're going to make the cutoff 4 months. I don't know why anybody would be against that.
Yeah,
except for the life.
I'll give you the reason I'm against that.
Okay.
So to me, you're admitting that there's no clear line of demarcation on it.
Correct.
Right. So we can make the line of demarcation much later than fucking 4 months.
Okay, well that's just an arbitrary value. Pick whatever time you want.
What I'm saying is, like, yeah, if you want to pick whatever value you want, then there should be no reason to legislate any value.
Well, that's not true. No, because that's like saying that we shouldn't have a line of demarcation for the amount to drink. We make it 21 in most states for hard alcohol, but there's no objective reason to do so.
I think drinking's a little bit different because we're not looking. All right, so with abortion, where the person that's affected mainly is the mother, and then there's we're talking about.
I think the child would disagree with you on that.
Say what?
I think the fetus would disagree with you on that. I think it's primarily.
I mean, we can bring the fetus into a hangout, and we'll discuss it. But to me, if you're gonna say there's a myriad of different lines on the demarcation, then shouldn't it be up to the individual? I think that individuals will be able to figure out morality on their own, and as long as it's a safe procedure, then I think that the majority of abortions are not going to be day before birth. You know, like I don't think that people are like that. I think that most abortions are going to be like, some people get to 23 weeks and sometimes they don't even realize they're fucking pregnant. Maybe 23 weeks is a little late on that, but I've heard people that just have like a weird cycle and they're small when they're pregnant because they have their uterus is put in their body in a kind of a funky way, and then but
would it be a good
at
compromise?
24 or at 40 weeks, it's like, oh wait, no, I am pregnant. What the hell?
But I agree with you. But would it make a good compromise? Look at again, if the people that want to get rid of abortion don't make concessions, I don't think they're going to make headway at all.
Do both of you eat chicken?
I like chicken. Yes,
I'm eating chicken currently.
When baby chicks are born, there's males and female baby chicks, right? The female chicks, of course, will grow up to become hens, and they get spared and they get killed later for their breasts and their thighs and their whatever. But the little baby male chicks, guess what happens to them?
They get turned into cat food.
They go up a conveyor belt and they get chewed up in an extremely gruesome manner.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. Look, that's a different issue, and yes, I think that
I'm talking total suffering.
I think that we need to have more humane methods. I'm totally for that. I think that certain animals should even have rights. I have no problem with bestowing.
We might get into a veganism conversation here in a minute.
I'm not against it for sentient type beings. I think that intelligence level is something that we should take into effect on certain things. We have an efficacy issue. We don't eat orangutans. We don't eat chimpanzees. There are efficacy issues to be held.
Not because they're smart.
Well, no, I think it is because
chimpanzee was tasty. We'd be eating chimpanzee.
I have to disagree with you. There's also things along the lines as why don't we use them for like the hearts, and also because of the vector that they have for, that if they have a disease thing.
We don't eat them, but we do use them for medical experimentation in which crazy
Well, I'm against
shit
that.
happens to them and stuff.
I'm against vivisection.
No,
I think
I'm for
vivisection
that.
is
I'm for
completely
that.
horrifying.
Our understanding. If a few chimpanzee, similar higher order primates are going to be sacrificed for human understanding, I'm actually for that.
Not
Sacrificing at the altar of the science god.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm for that. And hang on, hang on. I certainly do not advocate that those sacrifices would be vivisection. That is beyond horrific.
I don't
and
like
I don't
living
think that
vivisection. That's kind of a odd practice to me. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is pharmaceutical experimentation. Like take vivisection out we can agree on vivisection. Like I would want to investigate what the reasons are for vivisection, especially like living vivisection, because I know that was one of the practices that was condemned
by definition,
the Japanese and the German governments when it came to their experimentation on prisoners.
If it's not living, it's called an autopsy.
Right. Okay, there we go. Good definition distinction there. So when we're talking about vivisection, I just thought vivisection was just cutting through the back. I didn't realize that
vivisection
had to be live. So that's interesting. I'd want to hear what the justification is for vivisection.
I don't know.
I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is. So I'm interested in listening to it, but I don't think I'll be convinced by it. Beyond that, what I was referencing wasn't vivisection. It was pharmaceutical experimentation, where we give chimpanzees like drugs and shit.
Yeah, I understand
whether
the
or not
reasoning.
It's going to work on humans.
Right, because they're
we have to pass a chimp examination before we go on to human.
But because they're so similar physiologically to us, but I think that we could probably get the same results from lower order creatures and not have to involve higher primates to do that. Now you're saying hypothetically,
something can work in a rat and not work in a chimp and not work in a human.
You're saying hypothetically, if something is unable to use in a lab rat, should we do it? And I don't know. I have to think about that, to be honest with you. I got to say right now,
the problem is that you're giving a chimp, like, let's say you're working on a smallpox vaccine. The part of the process of that is giving the chimp smallpox.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think they're sentient beings. I think they do have an intelligence.
We could probably go down this road path forever, but I'm just going to go on to the other thing I've done a 180 on in my last year was small businesses making wedding cakes for gay couples. I used to be pro government, and now I'm pro small business.
Baker.
So
yeah,
I think I'm on the side of the baker as well.
Yeah, I'm more libertarian on the issue.
The reason I disagree with that is because when you're in business, you have to abide by certain business practices. And when you get that business license, you're saying that I'm going to have fair and commercial trade, and I cannot at that point dismiss the right of somebody to go to your business for something based upon your own personal things, based upon a protected class.
Steve, let me make that, because I think we pretty much everybody understands that, but I want to make the point as somebody who works in the arts industry that if you're being commissioned an art, you don't have to agree to the damn commission. You can refuse the commission on any basis that you want to.
That is the different type of business.
That is the type of business that's being discussed in the wedding cake thing. It's art. It's being argued before the Supreme Court. It's being argued before the Supreme Court as arts business.
If it's something that's not, if someone walks into a 7-Eleven and wants to order something that's prepackaged at a convenience store, of course they have the right to buy it outright, no matter what. But if it's an artistic talent being applied to the product, I think there's a differentiation.
And the guy even said he would sell them an undecorated cake. He just wasn't interested in decorating it.
Exactly.
They could have gotten a cake from him. He can bake the cake. He just won't decorate the cake. He won't do the art.
You're arguing for the artistic license, because the commission of the artistic license.
Okay. Exactly. And I'm for that now. And guess what?
Well, that's a different argument then.
If that small business systematically refuses gays or interracial couples or black couples or anything, they would immediately pay the price in the marketplace of free ideas and the actual marketplace.
That's not necessarily true.
Well, if you're in Georgia,
we had businesses in the 50s that were systematically refusing blacks, and that didn't matter.
Right,
it depends
exactly.
very much on the structure, the society that you're in, the systemic structure, to reference our earlier part of the conversation, of the society that we're in, as to whether or not that's going to be acceptable. If a culture deems it as acceptable, it will be considered acceptable to just say, well, no blacks need apply, or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're in a society that values that, I mean, our society right now, yes, that would largely be true, that they would suffer. If you're in the city, if you're in the country, you may not suffer. Your business may in fact benefit.
But Ocean,
I know that like where I grew up, if a place did that, they'd probably get more business.
But let me ask you this: if I'm an artist and I have a commission, for me to make a wedding cake for a gay couple, and you know, unfortunately, Herman Mays just pointed it out, but somewhere I want to go too. How is that any different to commissioning for a straight wedding? It's it takes no difference for the amount of creativity. It's the same thing. What is the differentiation besides the person's?
It's the purpose of the art.
You can't say making a cake is art. I'm sorry. It's a service-oriented.
The decorating of a cake, decorating is artistic.
Yeah.
Artistic. That doesn't mean it's
hire an interior decorator to build a piece of art out of your home.
Yeah,
there is an artistic value to decoration.
I think, you know what? I think this really borderlines on aesthetics arguments.
In film, we call a set decorator part of art department.
Yeah, well, I realize that. But yeah, I realize that.
All right.
It is an art.
Yeah.
Okay, this is
all right.
The last question, but
go ahead.
It's really got a lot of moving parts to it, so I'm just gonna say yes. No, you don't want to. Trust me. This is going to be a very subtle argument, and it's our last question, and we're going to wrap it up here. Australia just initiated a selective hiring for female law enforcement officers to try to get up to an equity level, to try to get up to a 50-50 female-male police officer, law enforcement officer ratio. First off, I don't care who starts, but do you agree with this? And if so, would you also be for selective hiring of males in Australia or elsewhere, males in female predominant job fields like nursing or primary education?
It depends on the culture that we're talking about. I'm not familiar enough with Australian culture for me to say whether or not some kind of corrective strategy is necessary. Generally, I'm against these kind of things, but there's some fields, and I can say this about the film industry as well, that in film, for example, there's a lot of women that want to be involved. There's not a lot of women that are hired, and then that has to do with the film industry being kind of a boys' club. It's something that a lot of men and women in the film industry all recognize, but we still all fucking do it. And I make my movements to kind of correct for that. And I know a few other people that do as well. And you do get all female sets in which the women are just hiring each other because they're the only ones that are going to hire each other. Mm. And I've been part of those productions as well, and even contributed financially to them and been a producer on them. But because I think that they're good things, you wind up getting more lines on that resume for a lot of women that are trying to break into the film industry, and that's overall a good thing. Now, it's not has nothing to do with their talent. There's some departments that are seen as women departments, like makeup. It's hard for men to break into makeup. It's hard for women to break into lighting and grip. It's hard for women to get into directing. It's hard for women to get into most departments, really, with the exception of
what about STEM fields? What about STEM?
Well, I'm talking about film because that's what I'm familiar with.
Are predisposed to these types of fields.
I think women are
biology.
I'm talking about the field that I'm familiar with because that's the one I'm familiar with. When it comes to STEM, I'm familiar with individual women that express the culture in STEM fields as being similar to the boys' club type mentality that's in film. Because film, I think, is something. It's more like STEM. I think it's more attractive to men. Men generally want to go into it more than women do, but the women that are going into it are subjected to this male-dominated culture that's within the filmmaking. And it's there. It happens, and it makes it more difficult for women to get into. There's a combination between those two things that are true, where yes, it's probably more attractive to men, and there's probably a reason for that, but it makes women that are interested in it for genuine reasons, it gives them a lot more challenges in order to get in it. They have to wind up being twice as good as the guys in order to actually succeed.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment as well in the STEM fields as well, because look at we do know sciences are predominantly male oriented, and I think that mainly because maybe more guys are interested in it. But I think they were coming out of that. You got to remember back in the day, back in the 50s and 60s, you know, science was a male dominated thing completely. I mean, look at some of the very famous female scientists like Lynn Margulis or something. They had to fight to get their things across.
You don't think it's genetic though?
No, I gotta tell you, I think.
Are you aware of the Scandinavian studies where newborns under the age of 1 are shown that it's been conclusively substantiated that newborn males are more interested in mechanics and objects.
That wasn't what I was saying. Look, I think that men do
faces and people.
I'm familiar with those studies, and I'm also familiar with the fact that in Scandinavia they've tried to induce corrective measures, and it's modified.
I think
like
that there's
3% or something like that.
Yeah, I think that
but hold on, those
you already answered. Back off.
However, I'm chasing after you. I'm just harassing you, Steve. But I think that there's an answer in genetics somewhere where, as far as like men generally find this attractive, and as a generality, but it doesn't contribute to the answer that I was giving earlier about the result of that is that there's a culture around them, so that women that are the exception, that are generally interested in a male-dominated field, or men that are the exception that are generally interested in a female-dominated field, they're going to be facing a harder time. Now, the question is, can we rectify that harder time they're given? It's not whether or not, I think that the approach shouldn't be, let's make it 50-50. The approach should be, people that are genuinely interested in this, can we make it easier for them? Because it is inherently harder.
Well, yeah, no, I think that we should make it easier for women a little bit. You know, I do think that women, because of systemic reasons, have a much more difficult time getting into the sciences. I think they have much more to overcome. I see it with friends of mine. Scientist Mel has, you know, related those stories ad nauseum, how much more difficult it is. And I think she's right. I think there is I don't want to say bias, but I think it's a more difficult for women to break into the STEM fields. However, I see that trend changing a lot. Like I said, back in the day, it was male dominated. Men were the scientists. They were the smart ones. But I got to tell you, when it comes to the scientific fields, women are freaking brilliant. So yeah, I think there's a strong equality there. You place a man and a woman in the same program, and they'll both come out with equal knowledge and equal aptitude to, with equal ability to be proficient in their trade. So I don't think there's a distinguishing mark there that says that men are smarter than women.
No,
it's not about intelligence level. Would you agree that there is a genetic predisposition towards STEM fields by males? And is it necessary to legislate this type of equity?
Yes, to some degree. I mean, I don't know about legislation, but there's something that needs to be changed. And by the way, we are missing Nephilim Free Critique Thunderfoot's video. Oh my goodness, how could we miss that?
Let's get off right now. Let's go watch.
I don't know how I'm missing that. Nephilim Free. I mean, the genius, the level that he has to be able to receive so many brilliant people. I mean, he's masterful. Matter of fact, the other day he actually showed that DNA is comprised of amino acids. I don't know how he doesn't win the Nobel Prize for this. And I asked him this question. I swear to God, I've asked it before. It's a running joke with him because he's a genetics expert, supposedly. And we all know that DNA is comprised of nucleotides, not a big thing. You learn that in 5th grade, whatever. But I keep asking, I'm like, hey, Nephi, do you still believe that DNA is comprised of amino acids? And we know that proteins are composed of amino acids. The gene, you know, codes, has a nucleotides, and it goes the messenger RNA, and the RNA goes to the ribosome and it's translated into protein. Well, he actually said again, yes, we know the structure of the DNA is amino acids or something. And I'm like, and you're the genetics expert. Yeah. Okay, buddy. Thumbs up, my friend.
Jim, to come at you again about the question you just asked, I want to clarify something as well.
We moved on.
As far as whether or not it's genetic, I don't know whether or not it's genetic. it seems that men gravitate towards certain fields and women gravitate towards certain fields. Now, you could explain that culturally, you could explain that genetically, you could explain it with a combination. But again, my focus, what I believe the focus should be, is on when men are gravitated towards a field or women are gravitated towards a field, there's a culture that develops in them that lock out the other gender.
Yeah,
we do have a PhD biologist that says, we have a PhD biologist that says, and there is absolutely no genetic predisposition to being in STEM. And I'm going to agree with him on that. However, I do want to ask him, because he's a genetics expert. Nephilim Free says that DNA is comprised of amino acids. Now, let's ask the expert in the field here, an actual geneticist.
You're even bringing up Nephi.
Come on, I'm having fun. Is Nephilim Free going to win the Nobel Prize for this revolutionary approach to DNA such that it's comprised of amino acids?
All right, that's where we put a bow on this. Thank you guys. Thank you, Ocean. Thank you, Steve. Thanks to TJ.
This was fun.
Thanks for letting me on.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Did you get anything out of this though, Jim? I mean,
I know, Steve. You got plugs and shout outs you want to do.
Sure.
Go for it.
By the way, Dr. May says no. That's how he says, like, no. Good enough. By the way, first of all, thank you for allowing me on. I hope we have come kind of understanding now. I think that most people, except like one person in live chat, didn't understand. One person didn't understand, but the rest did. And I think that from this video, anybody who wants to go research anything that I've said, anything that Ocean said, or some other people in the live chat that agree with me, they can go do so. It's not that complicated. But I do have some shout outs. I want to shout out to all the people in the skeptic community. I think they've been doing a fantastic job. Holy Kool-Aid, Godless Cranium, Godless Engineer, Rachel Oates, Rationality Rules, even Cosmic Skeptic, who I disagree with on a few things. We got Apologia, Shannon Q, Prophet of Zod, Tony Reed. We've got a lot of people now, and I think they're doing an amazing job in getting people to think critically. And I think that's the end of the goal. Look at it. You don't have to be, in my opinion, I don't care if you're a theist. I don't care if you're an atheist. I don't even give a shit if you're agnostic. All I care about is that you try to think critically and you think these things through, and you try to at least try to hold beliefs that do have some kind of concording to reality. And you get rid of things like young earth creationism and flat earth, because they are permeating our schools. They're affecting your child's education. And I think those things are far more detrimental to society than if somebody holds a God belief or not, because those are affecting the destruction of the secular society that we hold and the separation of church and state. And so I'm very much against those things. So anyways, I think we're on the same page on that thing. Look at it. We all just come from a different perspective. That's it. We're on the same page for what we were trying to accomplish, right?
Yes. Okay. Ocean, you got any plugs?
Wait, I've got subscribe to my channel. Non Sequitur Show. Wait. Go, Non Sequitur Show. Go subscribe. Oh, because that's where we're going to be holding our bigger events.
You almost forgot that.
I do think the Non Sequitur Show is a fantastic channel. I give a here to Steve about work that's going on in the secular community or the skeptic community. There's obviously I have a lot of disagreements with some people in the skeptic community, but I think that there's a lot of good channels that are popping up, which are giving me some food for fodder. But I'll give a shameless self plug to my Twitter. It's / Ocean Keltoy and KELTOI. And beyond that, I just echo all the shout outs that Steve made, because I think that he's got some good shit there.
And thank you for your kind words. I got to tell people that I'm so grateful for the ratings we've been getting and the downloads we've been getting on the Non Sequitur Show and the people watching. It's just been overwhelmingly positive. And I got to tell you, we're putting forth a lot of effort on that particular show. We want it to be very large, and I'm hoping the effort we put into it is going to pay off at some point. I mean, it already started to.
It's paying off.
I'll give another shout out as well to people like Shannon Q and Scientist Mel that seem to be promoting a lot of honest conversation in the skeptic community as well.
The Non Sequitur Show is YouTube only, or are you on Stitcher?
No, we're on about 50 different platforms. We're on Anchor, we're on Spreaker, we're on or Stitcher, we're on iTunes. We have 6,000 downloads just on.
Can you spell Non Sequitur for those that don't know how to spell it?
NONSEQUITUR show.
We probably have IR.
Yeah, we probably have 20 to 30,000 downloads by now. Just our one video alone on the Kent Hovind, Aaron Ra discussion had 24,000 views. But that's not even, we're not even talking about the YouTube channel. I mean, the podcast alone has been, we're going to be in the top podcast for Podcast Land, I think, this month. We're in the top 5 as it is. And so we're putting forth all the effort for the podcast, but the YouTube channel is just a nice byproduct. And so we have almost 2,000 subs just on that channel alone. That's where we put the videos of the podcast. So
I'm overwhelmed that you're even part of this show. Thank you.
I love this show. I watch your shit.
And,
watch your stuff.
Yeah, well, I've got our staple right now is the atheist, the Bible trivia questions, and it's doing okay, but I got to branch out. And Ocean, you are by far my favorite polytheist. Steve, keep doing what you're doing. My shout outs are atheistedge.com, Atheist Edge on Facebook, at Atheist Edge on Twitter, and upcoming Faithless Forum on April 7th here if you're in the North Texas area. We got Prophet Azad, Godless Engineer. We got Thomas Westbrook. We got a whole ton of people coming to that. And that's April 7th. Look for it on Facebook or the Meetup app. And that will do it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.